17th, 2011 Historic Landmarks Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public may address our commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is not before the board today. Anyone? Nope. Close public comment. And we are looking for appointments to subcommittee vacancies. And I believe Gabriella handed out a list here. There are several vacancies, one being visual art in public places. Do I have anybody who wants to be the... Okay, we have Drury appointed, Boucher as an alternate.
The only question I would have, Commissioner, is what time the meetings are. Are there regular meetings?
I believe they vary, but staff can help me out on that.
Some of them are, I think most of them are
Just when
as
necessary?
needed
Yeah.
basis, yeah.
Like we did with the West Beach?
Exactly, and you'll receive an agenda.
I'd be happy
They'll
to
contact you by email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the next one is subcommittee member for Brinkerhoff Guidelines. Is that ongoing still? Guidelines?
It's basically on hold right now because of short staff.
So do we need a third there? You want
Well, who was on?
Okay. Okay, we have Lavoie.
Filling Suzette's, right? I don't.
So for Brinkerhoff, we have Murray, Lavoie, and Arias. The next is the preservation element.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Arias?
I have a question about that. We have already had several meetings. We are formulating the goals. The assignments have been made for the historic writing portion of the document, and we will be policies. We've already formulated policies, and we will be starting on goals. And as I recall, our appointments had to be approved by the City Council, and I'm not sure that we can work with
somebody
at this point.
I do remember that discussion. Staff, do you have anything to add to that? Okay, then I'm going to leave that one blank.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next, El Encanto Hotel. I think I'm going to leave that one blank too, since it's not extremely active. So we still have Drury, Schallenberger, Sharp, and Suiting on that. That's plenty. 433 East Cabrillo Boulevard, the Waterfront Hotel. We have Lavoie, Arias, and Schallenberger. That has not made any significant movement, so I'm going to leave that blank as well. 34 West Victoria Street, the former Vaughn's grocery store. We had Drury, Sharp, and Suiting. I don't see that needs another, so I'm going to leave that blank too.
Okay.
Do you want me to repeat what we did? Okay. Huh? No, we did two. We did Drury in visual art in public places, and we did Lavoie and Brinkerhoff Guidelines. Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the meeting of August 3rd.
Second.
Under discussion, any additions, corrections, or changes consistent with the spirit of the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sharp.
10, item 8. The first comment made by the commission, it says for a hostel. I think that is supposed to be a hotel.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that, too.
Anything else, Commissioner Sharp? Is your microphone on?
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, just a small one on page 4. Staff comment, Michael Berman project planner stated that there are, just put a D.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Right at the top. What page?
Page 4 at the top. Staff comment, Michael Berman, project planner, stated that there are areas of the site identified.
Put the T.
Okay.
Yeah, there instead of here.
Anyone else? Commissioner Schallenberger.
Page 9, under increased height for fly tower. There was one comment made that I don't think made it into the minutes, and that was specifically that the applicant's explanation / justification of the tower height was convincing.
How does the rest of the Excuse me, Mr. DeForest. How does the rest of the commissioner feel about that? Staff?
Mr.
I
Chair,
don't have that in my notes.
I
The
would,
only way I would, no, I'm sorry, but the only way I would know is to go back to the video because I don't have that in my notes at all.
Okay, Commissioner Rios?
rather than that, you could say informative, because I learned a great deal from what he was saying. But I didn't form an actual opinion of it, but I learned from his, so I would say informed would be better.
So maybe the applicant presented informative reasons for the fly tower height.
Right.
Well, they didn't present it. It was in response to our questioning. So
They responded with informative reasoning. That sound okay, Commissioner Schallenberger? Okay. Anyone else? I have a few. Page 5, item 3, 117, 119 West Mason Street. Under the motion, you have withdrawn motion. I think that shouldn't necessarily be titled withdrawn motion. It should just be motion in bold, because it's clear that the motion was withdrawn in the second paragraph or second item.
So,
So
I'm sorry.
just strike the word withdrawn and capitalize motion in that first motion.
To reopen the previously made motion? No,
accept the report.
as presented.
That first motion, which you have labeled withdrawn motion.
So in that first motion, instead of putting motion, what does it say? I don't see.
It just should say motion. It shouldn't say withdrawn
I
motion.
understand, but where it says action Lavoie Boucher, Drury absent, motion carried, I should put motion withdrawn then. Rather than having it as a title, I'll just put motion withdrawn. We have to show somehow that that motion
No,
is not
because
valid.
I know, but the motion did carry, and then it was withdrawn in the next paragraph. So if you follow it chronologically,
first-
the way the motions were made, that's when it was withdrawn.
Yeah, well, I actually think the first motion just needs to be motion and that it
That's-
carried.
That's what I said.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean now.
Okay.
Well, why didn't
Sorry.
you say that? No. Just kidding.
Let's press
Okay, so motion
rewind
carried,
on
and
that.
then, so it's just motion?
Yes,
And then the time, and then motion again, and that was to reopen it.
that's correct.
And then the amended, yep,
Perfect.
got it, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, page 9. Do I dare? Under item 7, we have the commission made the following comments: new landing and sidewalk extension. Under number 1, I think you should strike the word strongly on page 9. Number 1.
I agree with you.
Strike the word strongly and strike the words and approach. So the motion should read, the majority of the commission supports the Victoria Street right-of-way improvements in concept, period. Under 3, last sentence. I'm not sure why that's underscored.
Because that last sentence and the second to the last sentence seem to be a contradiction. So I did want to bring it up.
I would say strike the underscore.
So just leave it
I
as.
have to object to that, because
Okay.
I raised that point that they could abandon that entry, and there was some discussion about that from the applicant, that there was some talk. So it's an apple and an orange type of thing. Another drop-off should be considered as inside the public parking lot, or consider the abandonment on the Victoria Street, or they're two things.
Yes, Mr. Schallenberger.
I tend to agree to leave the language in as printed.
Fine.
Only, okay.
Okay. Number 4.
He hadn't finished. He said only.
Well, just that,
Oh.
it's up to the applicant really to
Right.
propose what their project is, and if they want to consider that as part of their proposal, their project, that's fine. And another point is that's not really on their property. They're going to have to work with the city to make that kind of a change, so it's a whole, it is a consideration. It is something they need to consider.
Okay. I'm fine with leaving the language. Number 4, I believe should read, reducing parking access to the neighbor to the east is not good neighbor policy. So reducing parking access to the neighbor to the east is not good neighbor policy. Number 5, the curb radii bulb out should relate to some element or terminus on the site and or the streetscape. Number 7, restudy the overall landscape along Victoria Street. So you're adding the word overall and striking the word strip, so that it better relates to the building and or entire streetscape. Moving on to number 11, second sentence. It was much more successful when it was proposed to be an imitation, not in imitation. Yes. Page 11, item 10. Very last sentence. Vice Chair Sharp disclosed that he owns a building just outside the 500-foot sphere of influence, not over, unless he's hovering.
Which he is wont to do.
That is all. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any other abstentions? So we have one abstention, Drury, the rest in favor. Yes? You, because you left, you? Okay. Okay. So Schallenberger abstains from 9, 10, and 11. 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Consent calendar. Ms. Gantz.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item A at 1118 East Cabrillo Boulevard was given a 2-week continuance. Item B, 17 West Haley Street, was final approval submitted. Item C, 740 State Street, was final approval as submitted. Item D, 1704 State Street, was continued for 2 weeks. And item E at 318 State Street was final approval as submitted with a condition. And those were reviewed by Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. We appreciate the time you spent. Yes.
It refers to 2 new eliminated wall signs. How are they eliminated?
We didn't look at the wall side.
Those, everything except for the 2 bases of the monument signs were already approved at the previous meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Murray.
I am concerned about the item A. I read the description of, I'm sure that Mr. Sharp reviewed it, but I'm not agreeing to putting those gates there, so I just wanted to be sure that is well reviewed.
Mr. Chair.
Item A, Commissioner Murray has the floor.
Yeah, the structure of merit. It's a structure of merit. I don't know. It's pretty important
It's more than a
site. Yeah.
be a landmark.
Can we have one person speaking at one time? Thank you.
Sorry. Anyway, I would just maybe Commissioner Sharp could tell us.
Commissioner
what,
Sharp, would you like to respond?
Happy to.
Yeah.
I felt that the submittal was not worthy of an approval and asked them to come back in 2 weeks. And since that time have thought about the fact that it should come to the full commission.
So we have a request to move item A to the full
Okay.
board.
Yeah, I would make a motion that item A be moved to the full board, and it's probably in the best interest of the applicant.
I don't know that we need a motion, but it's a suggestion, definitely. Okay, so you're going to ratify the consent calendar then? So that, I guess that becomes part of the motion then.
That
yeah.
would be part
Yeah.
of the motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to ratify the consent calendar with the condition that 1118 East Cabrillo Boulevard be brought before the entire board.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rios, a second by Boucher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Suding abstains from item E. Next item on the agenda is announcements or requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals.
So, Mr.
Staff.
Chair, Commissioner Sharp will be leaving today at 3 p.m., is that correct? Okay. HLC will attend a joint site visit of the city police station with Planning Commission and the Police and Fire Commissions on Tuesday morning, August 23rd at 7:45 a.m. And then the applicant for the Victoria Hall project, actually, is that a separate agenda item?
It is. For God, is that
Okay,
been
so
done?
I don't have any other
Okay.
announcements.
Ms. Gans, may I ask what the purpose of the site visit is to police station?
I believe it's to have you guys walk around inside the building with an eye towards a future, I think it's a demolition and rebuild on the same site. I don't know
Okay.
what the project entails. I just know it's future.
Could
Future-
perhaps Ms. DeBusk edify us so that we can
Sure.
go in there with, sort of a direction? I mean, it
Um,
seems like we're being paraded, or to me, being paraded around the police station without any sort of
Well, I'm
intent
sure
or
she would.
direction.
Well, I'm sure she wouldn't just
I know, I know.
lead you there and not say a
No,
word to you. I'm sure she will
We
brief
need to
you.
know why we're going there, yeah. We haven't heard.
Well,
about that.
I thought the email didn't. I thought the email specified that it was for some upcoming project. I mean, I don't know what exactly.
I don't know, it just seems unusual that we'd be touring a building before the project has come before us.
I don't know. Do you want me to
Okay.
call her and have her come down and explain?
Or send us an email would be wonderful.
Actually, I agree. It's not our concern. We understand the police department needs a larger facility. It's not our concern, it's the planning commission's concern. We're only concerned that the architecture looks appropriate and that it's been all said and done.
Sorry, I'm not on.
Well,
So if we could
it's
just
not-
get clarification
It's not
on that.
required that you be there. I mean, they asked you to attend, so they're not telling you you have to go.
That's a good
So
point.
if you don't want to go, you
Okay.
can
Okay.
respond back. And I believe Allison sent an email a little while ago saying that she
Carpool
wanted
or
a phone
meet.
call. So if you want to call her and say you won't be there, that's your prerogative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next item is creation of a Victoria Hall Theater ad hoc. Yes. Oh,
Leave by 5 o'clock. And also, I'd like to also bring the attention of the
Don't hand it to
commission on, yes, it's the dates on there. It's an LA Times article on the destruction or the proposed destruction of the Cronish House in Beverly Hills, which has nothing at all like a preservation committee or historic landmarks commission. And it's a very well-written article, quite angry, which I found very refreshing.
thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Jury. I do want to make another announcement, actually. I want to ask all of the commissioners to respect each other when it comes to turning pages and people speaking. Also to respect the applicant. Just to try to keep things quiet so that everybody can hear, and also try to speak as loud as possible. Thank you. Next is the creation of a Victoria Hall Theater Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Ms. Gantz, did you want to add anything?
No, we just
Okay.
need some, yeah.
Yeah, I had at the August 3rd Commission suggested and that we form a subcommittee. The applicant likes the idea, so I guess we have to go with that. It is a little bit early, recognizing it is a little bit early to have a subcommittee, but I think it's a significant project that needs some direction. And I have volunteered, and I believe Commissioner Lavoie has volunteered, and Commissioner Drury. Is it okay to have three?
If it is, and if it's acceptable to the rest of the commission, because
It's-
it was done in a
circuitous
strange-
way.
in trying to accommodate the applicant's request.
So-
We did it kind of backwards.
Does the commission feel that a subcommittee is necessary?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the rest of the commission behind us. Okay, thank you. Any subcommittee reports?
I have one report of a meeting that didn't happen. We had a designation subcommittee scheduled for this morning, but it was canceled.
Okay.
I have one.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes. Historic Resources Element Subcommittee Task Force meet this morning. We have come up with at least a draft of 4 goals, and so we will be working hard on that. And also Mary Louise Days is helping us with the history section of the element. And so things are moving forward in that direction. If you want to send any comments or have questions, we are here to accommodate you.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much, Commissioner Murray and Commissioner Villas, as well as Ms. Days. Anything else? Okay, moving on to the first item of the agenda. We are 8 minutes behind. Item number 1, 2559 Puesta del Sol. This is a historic structures report. It's a review of the errata revisions to the report prepared by Post Hazeltine Associates. Do you have any staff comments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
Not at this point.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay, questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lavoie, speak loudly, please.
Does the preparer of the report have any issue with the requested changes?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else questions, comments? I'll make a comment. I thank you two very much for listening to my comments as well as Commissioner Murray's and all the rest of them. I think the objective was to get the best, tightest report that we could get, and I think we've got that now. So I appreciate all that hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. I will ask for a motion.
To accept the report?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the report as modified by Lavoie, second by Boucher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 2. It's an archaeology report for 157 La Jolla Drive. This is a review of a Phase 1 archaeological resource report prepared by David Stone. Ms. Gantz, or other staff? Nope. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Gantz.
Dr. Glassell reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's recommendations that because no project impacts on prehistoric or historic archaeological resources would occur, no mitigation measures are required, but the standard condition regarding the discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources would apply and shall be on the plans prior to issuance of the building permit.
Perfect.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Boucher, second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I
Moving
saw a
it.
point of order. You forgot to ask for public input.
You're right, I did. We need to reopen that and ask for open public comment. Any public comment? Close public comment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schellenberger, would you?
Can't ask questions, there's nobody here to respond.
We do have a case planner here if you have a question regarding 157 La Jolla Drive.
Okay, Mr. Schallenberger.
Another point of order.
Okay. These are usually pretty much slam dunks, but
Quite often, people don't come in for the ARC reports,
Yeah.
so I flounder and try to try to fill in.
so we had a motion by Boucher, a second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Catching up. Okay, we have an archaeology report now, again, for item number 3. This is De La Guerra Plaza. Do I have any staff comments?
Mr. Chair. Dr. Glasser reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's recommendations that the project would have a Class 2 impact unless mitigated, and that a focused Phase 2 archaeological resources report is recommended. And if you have questions, we do have a case planner.
Okay. We don't have an applicant, correct?
Actually, we have the applicant, we have the archaeologists here as well.
Okay, come forward,
And,
please.
other staff members.
We have enough chairs.
Welcome. Did you want to add anything? Make any presentation? Okay. If you would please introduce yourselves for the record.
Regula Campbell, architect, Campbell & Campbell.
Microphone on, please.
What's your name again? I'm sorry.
She's going to turn the microphone. There we go.
Regula Campbell, architect, Campbell & Campbell.
Colleen Hamilton.
There you go.
Colleen Hamilton, Applied Earthworks, archaeologist.
Thank you.
Douglas Campbell, landscape architect, Campbell & Campbell.
Great. Thank you. Public comment. Open public comment. Seeing no one. Oh, I don't have a slip. You can fill that out after if you'd like to come up. This is the archaeological report. Ms. Lodge, if you'd like to come up and sit right here.
Is this the appropriate time for comments on the plan?
No, this is for the archaeology report only. Okay. Just so you know, we have the archaeology report, then we have the historic structures report, and then we have the concept review of the actual project. Everybody understand? Okay. So we are still on the archaeology report. Questions from the commission? Mr. Schallenberger.
So these reports are usually fairly self-explanatory and talk about the impacts and the recommended mitigation measures, and we understand them, having seen them before, but can you just, for the audience and even the television, do a brief executive summary, sort of layman's terms? I mean, this is just a really important site, and it kind of goes beyond the legalistic terminologies of CEQA, and maybe just a brief archaeological summary.
Ms. Hamilton.
Okay, we did an initial testing on the site, shovel testing. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. And our tests indicated that there are Mission-era deposits present within the plaza that retain good integrity. What we weren't able to establish was how extensive those deposits are. And so based on the information we gathered, we recommended that additional testing be undertaken in order to develop a good, sound strategy for how to manage those deposits in the context of the project.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, question?
Yeah. So is that why we're requiring the phase 2 study as well as a phase 3? Because I was reading on page 42, you sort of indicated that you're going to do a phase 2 to better assess the resources, and then a phase 3. And is that phase 3 is what would that be, like a strategy to how to deal with that, or?
Okay, the phase 2 is to gather additional information on how to approach the phase 3. A phase 3 is a data recovery, and that'll be based on the final plans, development plans, in order to recover those portions of the deposit that would be directly impacted. So at this point, we don't have enough information to develop that, and that's why we are recommending the additional work.
I understand. Commissioner Murray, are we finished with questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Drury, question?
So what kind of testing would that be? Would you be trenching across, figuring out some sort of axis to trench across to get an idea of the layout of what's left?
At this point, we're proposing hand excavation, no mechanical trenching. What we want to do is explore the limits of the deposit that were exposed previously to get a better sense of what's there, and to take that information and apply it against the proposed plans. So at this point, it's purely hand excavation.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Comments? Commissioner Arias, any comments?
No, I found the report very, very informative.
Thank you. Commissioner
Thank you.
Boucher?
No.
Sharp?
Good report.
Great. Commissioner Murray, any comments?
I'm very grateful for what you're doing, and I'm glad to hear that last sentence where you said, while you're developing your strategy, you are going to be, looking at the proposal and see how that works.
Work hand in hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lavoie, any comments? Commissioner Drury? Commissioner Schallenberger? Okay, then I'll look for a motion. Anyone?
Second. With Dr. Glassow's recommendation.
Okay, motion by Lavoie, second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well done. Yeah, you can stay. I was just checking the time. I didn't want to be ahead of schedule because then I get in trouble. Get in trouble if I'm behind schedule. Get in trouble. Right. Okay. The next item on the agenda is item number 4. It's a historic structures report for De La Guerra Plaza. This is a revised project. The parcel includes city landmarks, City Hall, and California Pepper Tree. The project proposes lowering the grade of the central lawn area, replacing the U Road parking space, replacing the U Road surface and sidewalks in concrete, eliminating 5 curbside parking spaces in the U Road, adding 1 space on De La Guerra, widening the sidewalk by 4.5 feet on the western side of the plaza, installing new crosswalks across De La Guerra Street at the plaza, installing new amenities, so on and so forth. So we have the historic structures report. Any staff comments?
I'd just like to say that staff has reviewed the report, as has the environmental analyst, and we all concur with the results and conclusions.
Ms. Kennedy, could you identify yourself, please?
I'm Kathleen Kennedy, case planner for this project.
Thank you. Any other comments from staff?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that the people who gave you speaker slips want to speak to the historic structures report.
I have
not the
item
project.
4 for Kellam DeForest.
Okay.
That's the only one I have for this
Okay.
so far.
And then, Ms. Lodge, you want to speak to the project? The
That would be
project,
item 5.
not the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, just to be clear, item 4 is the historic structures report, what we are discussing right now. The next item on the agenda is item 5, which is the plan, the proposal. Okay? Okay. Just so everybody in the audience is clear, because I don't want to miss anybody. So I will ask the applicant if they want to talk about anything. Not yet, Mr. DeForest. Public comment comes after applicant presentation.
Oh, okay.
So
This
just
is still on 4, their report.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
thank you.
So you just stay right where you are, but please don't say anything. Anything from the applicant?
I'm Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates. Excuse me. I just think that we just wanted to not clarify, but sort of expand on the period of significance in the report. And while obviously the plaza has a history going back, before 1853, our period of significance is 1853 to 1924. That is related to the built environment that's there now, and so that period of significance is speaking to what you see now, and that's the later part of that period is what the plaza most resembles today. So that's the period of significance that we assigned for the resource.
I'm not clear on that. You just confused the heck out of me.
Oh, okay. Well, instead of the period of significance, say starting in the 1820s or earlier, we were looking at it as a cultural landscape in terms of the built environment. So if you go out to De La Guerra Plaza today, you see resources that were built beginning in the 1820s with the Casa de la Guerra, but what you see is a sort of totality as a cultural landscape. It really resembles the plaza that was initiated as a public park in 1854, and then going to 1924 when the original City Hall was demolished, and then the plaza was reopened as a large public gathering space.
Okay.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear.
Yeah. Anyone else in the applicant team? Okay, then I will open public comment. Mr. DeForest, you have the floor. If Mr. Hazeltine could give you the microphone.
Excuse me. No, I don't need to sit. Kellam DeForest. I just wanted to, and I don't think it's the report emphasizes enough because I've been getting lots of, or comment, not lots, but comment about retaining the curbs. And I find, and obviously you have documented that the curbing for the U-shaped driveway goes back to the second courthouse, which I'm not quite sure when, and maybe you can do that, but as a historic piece of cultural landscape, the curved U-shaped driveway seems it needs to, and I think needs more emphasis in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I also have a letter addressed to Ms. Lamone, who's a project planner, from Lawrence Cook. Mr. Cook is pleased to see the renovation of De La Guerra come to pass. He believes the design will be more people-friendly as well as more functional. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there was also another letter sent to us by email of somebody objecting to certain aspects of the project.
Okay. Maybe that should probably actually come during the project, not the report. Yeah, my bad. Then I'll close public comment and questions from the board. Commissioner Rios, do you have any questions?
Not in this area.
Okay, Commissioner Boucher?
What do you mean?
Yeah, you over there.
No, that's okay.
Hey, lady.
Unless you think I'm
No comment.
No questions?
No questions
Okay.
or comments.
Commissioner Murray, any questions?
Did you talk about the curb cuts and why you feel that eliminating them is not going to be an impact? I guess I wasn't sort of convinced with that. I sort of felt that it was something that had been there for quite a while. And so your analysis was because you feel that I felt that there were important parts that had existed in the plaza, and their removal, I didn't get the sense that it was well mitigated. So I was wondering if you would elaborate why do you think the curb should be okay if they're gone?
Okay, 1 second, Mr. Hazeltine. Mr. Schomburg, you have something to add?
You mean the curbs, not the...
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
The curbing around. She means curbs.
Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
She means curbs. Okay, Mr. Hazeltine, if you'd like to respond. Or
Yeah,
Pam. Ms. Post.
Pamela Post, one of the authors of the report. Yes, we feel that the curbs, because I was a little,
Sorry.
trying to curb cuts, I'm trying to remember where they were. But the curbs should be retained because these were the plaza, particularly after 1924, because of allowing automobile traffic. And since it still is going to be retained as a place in which cars will still have access to it, that the curbs be retained.
But yeah, just to
Yeah.
clarify, we...
Mr. Hazeltine?
Tim Hazeltine. We were primarily concerned with the curbs around the sidewalk and did assign a lower level of significance to the curbs that surround the grassy area. Part of that is if you look at the older aerials, here's one from 1928, you can see that the actual sort of configuration of the plaza has actually changed a little more than one might suspect from going out there today. At the, would be considered the south end near the News Press building, it was more of a flattened, it was slightly curved at either end, or not either end, but at that end it was slightly curved, but it was essentially sort of linear where it faced towards the News Press building. And also in front of City Hall, there's been a slight, on that whole side, which would be the east side of the grassy area, that's actually been cut back from what it looked like in 1928. Here's a close-up of 28. And then you can see the I'm sorry to say this is, the resolution of these is dependent on the
Aerials are
photos,
okay.
so once
Yeah,
we
this-
blow them up, they get pretty horrible.
The semicircular, you can see, is actually between 1943 and 59, so it falls outside of the period of significance.
so
So
the
this
reason
is
is-
much later.
If we could have just one person speaking, Mr. Schallenberg. Mr. DeForest, would you please not bother the commission at this moment?
So just to follow up on that, the rationale was that the configuration of the grassy area is not what it was during what we consider the historic period, because it had been altered. So we thought, because those curbs have been replaced, the configuration isn't the same, that it would not be the same level of impact as if they removed the curbs around the sidewalk area, which has stayed pretty close to the 1924 configuration, or closer.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, any other questions? Commissioner Lavoie, question?
Thank you again for a thorough and exhaustive reading report. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
I've been talking about this plaza since I was first on the commission, so it's been a long time coming to see the design finally happen. And part of the discussion over the years has been the removal of all of the parking. What impact would the removal of the parking have on the historic significance?
It would be less than
Less
significant.
than significant, yeah.
In that, at what period did the parking show up?
Well, parking actually
As designated.
Oh, it's designated?
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
people in 1924 just parked.
Yeah.
I mean, as a designated
designated
parking area.
You know, I'm not sure exactly when it became designated, but as you note, there has been parking in one form or another dating back to the 19th century. But parking in and of itself, you know, if it wasn't there, it's the overall configuration of the plaza and the layout in a broad sense, surrounded by historic buildings dating from from the early 19th century until the 1920s and slightly later. So the parking isn't in and of itself, having a car parked there isn't historic. And its law, if that was removed, it wouldn't impinge
Impact the
at all.
integrity. No.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Drury? I have a problem with names today, sorry.
Well, I'm looking at a couple of photographs. One's I don't think it dates from 1910, but it was after Francis Underhill's renovation of Casa de la Guerra. But I'm seeing curbs. 1924 is the one that is the date, and photograph 11. I should make that. Oh, there's no page. It's photograph 11 in the black and white. It just shows curves. I just wanted to, I'm not going to comment on that, but it does seem to me that shows at least 90 years worth of curbing. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Schallenberger, any questions?
Yes, since we're doing good on time, I'd like to have you indulge me on it. I think in the early part of the report.
What page?
Page 3. So this is just a curiosity. I'm looking for you to indulge me. But midway under the environmental and neighborhood setting, it talks about human occupation and activity have almost entirely eliminated the sloughs. When you say almost, where are there any now?
May I respond?
Yeah, it's a question.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
down. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's called the Salt Pond or the Andre Clark Bird Refuge.
Yeah,
That's
Pompano Beach.
a remnant slough. And whenever we have a really big flooding episode, you know, down by the Lower East Side becomes a slough once again. So there are remnants, but, you know, of course, historically, everything between the Clark Estate and what's now City College was just a big swampy area, going all the way up to the high school in some places.
But this was in the Presidio area. This specifically talking about the Presidio area.
There's a slough actually came. I mean, I don't have the map in front of me, but it came.
I won't
to the
belabor
lower-
it. It's okay.
Okay, but it actually
We're
came
just
quite-
humoring him anyway.
basically where
It came
Garden
close.
Street is. It came quite close.
Okay.
There's been a lot of reconfiguring of the topography.
Okay. And then a little lower in the document, you talk about during the prehistory. You mentioned Yananali, the most powerful Chumash chief at the time. Was there more than one?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. There's a-
Good questions, Commissioner Schellenberger. We enjoyed them.
In the report also, you reference James Osborne Craig and G.W. Smith's concepts or ideas for the plaza, but I don't see any plan like you have, I think, the city engineer plan, and you have there was another plan example proposed. Are those just referenced somewhere, or is there a reason that wasn't included?
There are actually quite a number of prospective plans, and we included, since those plans they had were never brought to fruition, and we thought it was relevant to acknowledge they exist, but they didn't get built. So,
But neither did the Olmsted one or the city engineer one.
But the city engineer and the Olmsted plans both informed what happened later on the plaza. So they were part of that whole process of how was the plaza going to be figured as a physical space? What was it going to look like, and what would be there? So we were looking at that in that kind of sense.
Okay. And then continuing with the conversation about the impact of removing cars. I've always wondered this about the historical impact or impacts on historical resources. Can't there be a positive impact? In other words, if you remove something, for in this case cars, from the plaza, it can be an impact, but maybe not necessarily a negative impact. Is that concept part of?
It's part of CEQA.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yeah, there is
Yes.
I think it's standard 6. It's a beneficial impact on the environment. I believe it's 6. I'm not sure.
Anything else? I have a few maybe, and bear with me. I didn't get organized as much as I should have. On page 15, you're referencing these historic aerial photos. Is there any possible way to get better quality?
Unfortunately,
Not
not.
absolutely
Yeah,
not.
we apologize for the quality of that, but that's the best resolution we could get because of where they were taken, the level they were taken.
12,000, right? There was, that's
Okay,
actually the best.
that's fine.
Okay.
Page 14. This is where the question came up in my mind, but when did El Mercado start happening associated with Fiesta? What year?
I believe it would be 24.
No, it's actually slightly later, but I'll be honest, I don't know.
Oh, the El Mercado?
The El Mercado. That's obviously a historic use of the public space, and it is what it is intended, that kind of use is intended for the space. So if we could add that information to the report, I think that's helpful because that is what it's still used for today.
Sure.
One of the main events there. Page 19, under the history of 6.2. It says the existing paving surrounding the tree was installed in 1923 when City Hall was constructed. Was that concrete paving installed since 1923, the concrete paving that is there now? That's the way this sentence reads, because it says the existing paving. So today, the extant paving surrounding the tree is what was installed in 1923. Is that true?
Yeah.
There's no paving around the
I think we meant, pardon, adjacent.
Well, it
But
says surrounding, but whatever.
We will go back and look at that, and it probably should be worded that concrete paving has existed around the tree since 1924.
Okay.
So how about if
just
we
clarify
revise
that. Okay. And then page 18, very last sentence. The gates at City Hall were recycled from the since demolished child estate. Are you talking about the vehicular gates that go down to the basement? Those are laser cut.
Yeah. Those were handmade.
Yeah, we will correct that information.
Because you're talking about the walled service yard on the south
Yes.
side of the building. If
Yeah.
I'm thinking where I'm thinking, they're new, so they were not recycled. Yes.
I think they used to be before they were replaced. About 12 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. I'll clarify
The
that.
original gates may have been from the child estate.
I believe they were. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will correct that.
Page 23. Second paragraph, page 23, second paragraph, second to the last sentence starts with the courtyard garden, which dated to the early 20th century, was moved and replaced with gravel. Or was it decomposed granite? You're talking about the courtyard at the Casa della Guerra.
Gravel.
It was gravel? Was it not decomposed granite? Okay.
Well, decomposed granite is a form of granite.
Yeah,
That's
that is,
true.
yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Under same page 23, under 6.7 description, a decorative railing. Should that be called fence? Not railing. So last paragraph on page 23, 6.7. It says that it is currently paved in brick with linear planters extending along both sides of Stork Placida. A decorative railing composed of metal poles and sheet metal cutouts of palm trees set on a parapet of cut sandstone extends along the State Street frontage. The railing is flanked by circular piers. I think should be fenced, don't you?
Okay.
That's kind of a comment. I'm trying to keep with questions. Basic question. Why, maybe this is more for the project, I'd like your response as a historian. Why would you propose to remove the curbs?
Well, we're not proposing to remove the curbs. We're evaluating a project that proposes to remove the curbs.
Okay.
So what we were trying to ascertain was if they remove the central curb, would that so diminish the integrity of De La Guerra Plaza in a significant way that it would impinge on its ability to convey its appearance during the period of significance?
Then your assessment is it would not.
It would not to such an extent that it would be a significant, unavoidable impact.
Okay, that's all. Comments? Commissioner Arias?
No, I'm wait for the next issue.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher? Comments? No? Commissioner Sharp?
No comments.
Commissioner Murray? Commissioner Lavoie?
Chair, an excellent report, thorough, and its analysis and presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Drury, any comments? Commissioner Schallenberger, any comments?
Motion to accept the report.
Wait, he has some comments.
Oh, yeah, comments.
I'm not sure I can agree with the report's conclusions that removing the curbing is less than significant.
I would have to agree with that. I'm not. You would too? Okay. It is a good report, very thorough. Especially enjoyed reading about the trains coming to Santa Barbara. But I completely disagree with you on the removal of the curbs being a less than significant impact, and that is regardless of what period of significance you're talking about. Those curbs are 87 years old, or that a facsimile or a portion of those curbs have existed for 87 years. And for the report to say it's been reconfigured slightly at the south end, been altered, that qualifies it as less than significant? No, it doesn't. So I disagree with the report and I cannot support it.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that, but I am I'm willing to look at the design there. In other words,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Drury?
Making a comment such as that, I think the report's a fantastic report, but I can also disagree with the curbs. I would disagree, actually, vehemently.
And we are approving this report, and part of this report is the conclusion that the removal of the curbs is less than significant. So each and every commissioner needs to be comfortable with that. Okay?
Mr. Chair, there is a chicken and the egg. I could also hear out the design concept, and maybe some of those justifications will be made during that presentation. But
So would you suggest then tabling the report until after hearing
Yes.
the design presentation?
yes.
No? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lavoie?
Do you find then that that would be a mitigatable impact?
To remove the curbs,
Yes.
you could mitigate that in some way, shape, or form?
Yes.
No.
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 What about the level change that's
No.
also part of the proposal?
Cannot mitigate that either.
Oh, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Then I make a
Respect.
motion to accept the report as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, because even though I disagree with that part, I also am looking to the design to see if there are mitigation measures that can deal with that.
Let me ask the commission again before we finalize this motion. Who would like to table this report until we see the presentation?
You were in the middle of taking a vote.
No, we were in the middle of making a motion.
You took a vote.
You already took a vote, and some people said aye, so I wanted to find out how many people said aye before. You need to finish.
When did I take a
You did. You're out of order, sir.
Okay.
I said aye.
I said aye.
Okay.
So, 1, 2, Fermina, did you say, I thought you said
I
aye.
guess I said aye because I wanted to see what the design is and whether that's mitigated or not.
Okay. So we have 3 ayes, 4 ayes. That would be.
Sharp, Lavoie.
You want me to read them, or have you got them?
Go ahead.
Okay. Boucher, Sharp, Murray, and Lavoie. Opposed? Aye. Opposed is Schallenberger, Drury, Suding, and Arias. Motion fails.
Move to table.
We have a motion to table this report.
Second.
We have a second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No oppositions. Motion carries. We are tabling the report. Did I do that right?
Yep.
I think so.
Close enough. Okay. Thank you. Pam, Tim, thank you. Stick around. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the concept review of De La Guerra Plaza. This is a revised project. I think we all are familiar with what's going on. I will read, it's continued as well. I will read the minutes, I guess, from the last meeting, which was October 17th, 2007. Wow. So that was 4 years ago. Exactly 4 years ago. Okay. There were a few members of the public that made comment. We had a motion for indefinite continuance with positive comments and a request for a focused letter report on the impacts of this project on neighboring historic resources and a request for copies of the document prepared by the Trust for Historic Preservation on the history of the plaza. At that time, Sharp appears to be the only one that was on the commission at that time. No, that's all right.
No, I was.
Yeah. Okay. That doesn't matter. Okay. We have staff comments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Mark Aguilar with the Redevelopment Agency, and I'll allow the rest of the group to introduce themselves before I start off with a brief intro.
I'm Liz Limon with the Redevelopment Agency as well.
Regula Campbell, architect, Campbell & Campbell.
Doug Campbell, landscape architect, Campbell & Campbell.
Thanks for sticking around.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon. I'm just going to provide a very short, brief history because it has been 4 years exactly since we were last here, and when the Commission last saw this project, it was significantly different from what you see before you today. This project came to the Redevelopment Agency in 2004, and our direction from Council at that time was a list of simple, just-do-its, infrastructure improvements, and we began with Campbell & Campbell a year later, in 2005. We took some options to Council for them to weigh in on, and at that time they gave us direction. They're very impressed with the work that Campbell & Campbell did, and they gave us direction to expand the scope that they had initially advised. And so we did that, and we expanded, and we brought that to you what we found was that that expanded project was not necessarily embraced by the broader community. So we went through many meetings in the public hearing process. We returned to council and advised them of what we had heard, the input received, and so we've now, on their direction, come back with a revised project, which consolidates back down to more of an infrastructure, where we're following their guidance, which was to keep the plaza the same and yet make it better and accommodate vehicles and pedestrians at the same time in a safe manner. The rub for staff is balancing all those, as well as acknowledging that this plaza serves the community on a daily basis, but also at special events during the year when it is closed off. So with that, just that brief background on the project and the process, I'll pass it on to our consultant team.
Ms. Limon, looking to add? Okay. You're on.
Thank you very much. You have before you the package that was prepared and reviewed. We also have an illustrative version of the plan for your use if you would like to see it.
Let's see what you've got here. Okay.
There are a number of supporting documents, all of which are referential here, but this may be a little more clear.
Okay, just to orient everyone, this is City Hall, De La Guerra Street, News Press Building.
As Mr. Aguilar described very briefly, what you see is a result of an intensive effort, most recently over the past year and a half, building on an earlier effort that began, I believe, in 2006, if I'm correct, which was initiated in order to cure a number of issues that appear in this area. Clearly, as Mr. Aguilar said, infrastructure issues, public safety issues, traffic circulation and parking issues, discrepancies between existing conditions and current standards of public safety access, parking, and also, as Mr. Aguilar said, acknowledging the daily life of this place, as well as its life to accommodate important events in the life of the city. Of course, the mercados, as well as the kinds of things that happen spontaneously as public gatherings and so forth.
It is the civic heart of the city of Santa Barbara, so it needs to function as a civic plaza too, with the city hall here for civic celebrations, memorials, protests, etc. Another issue that we looked at, of course, was sustainability and environmental issues over the long run of the plaza and how it would function that way in the city.
So I guess to begin with some of the more specific changes in the geometry and the layout of the plaza, starting at the State Street side, this scheme shows the existing sidewalk, which, as you know, is a little over 4 feet to 5 feet wide, being extended to approximately another 4.5 feet, with the raised curb around the outer edge, a slight variation here to address the city hall, and then with the roadway width maintained, parking maintained here along the outer perimeter and along the inner perimeter on this side, slight shift in the existing line of the turf, 4 feet, and the replacement of the raised curb, which was noted as a hazard for the daily life of the plaza as well as its life for events. With a flat curb, separating the lawn with pedestrian lights and a row of bollards, with changes to the grading of the plaza so as to allow storm drainage to be conducted into the center line to percolate into the turf area, retaining the majority of the storm water on the site. As we get into surfaces and materials, we look at the concrete that we find remnant of from the historic period with a score pattern consistent with the historic period for both the sidewalk pedestrian areas and the roadway, with the addition of paved areas into this section, pedestrian crossing here, and extension of the paved area at this end of the plaza to better accommodate the stage event. In addition, there would be, as Mr. Aguilar had mentioned, upgrades to the infrastructure system to accommodate the event booths, gas, water, sewer, and electrical power.
So you can see that the shape of the lawn area, the open area, the non-paved area, is much more similar to the earlier aerial photograph that you saw, and that it's a rectilinear shape. We've added this paved area here, cleared out the agapanthus in order to better connect the plaza, since it was a gift from the De La Guerra family to the city to open and to strengthen this connection visually from the Casa de la Guerra to the south and across the plaza, so that that connection is stronger. As you may recall, in our earlier presentation, we had raised this whole area so that it was a plaza that really addressed the Casa de la Guerra. But De La Guerra Street now is curved on either side, but we've added these crosswalks. There's one here already from the street in Spain along the back, the eastern edge of the Casa de la Guerra and up through El Paseo, and then one on the other side too at the edge of the Casa to facilitate people moving across. All of this has subtle grade changes just to be able to accommodate new practices in sustainability and to collect the stormwater here in the center. And also, if you've ever parked along this edge in front of Casa de la Guerra, you'll know that that curve is very odd. It's quite high. People scrape their doors, and it's hard to get out of your car. So we're just slightly altering that to repair that. And I think there's new lighting, as you can imagine, and also that electrical box, that tent, which sits out here in the plaza, has been relocated, and we're hoping to relocate it right in this area here. We're looking at options right now, so it'll be out of the way and won't impinge on the plaza itself. We've also added a accessibility from Stork Placita to encourage traffic from State Street through Stork Placita into the plaza. So there are curb cuts here to accommodate wheelchairs across this edge and to ensure that people can get to the plaza. Part of that same concept is the idea of this paved area. And in elevation, you can see that it connects the arched opening here, or the opening, the front steps of the City Hall to the City Attorney's office across the street, across the plaza. And we also had hoped that this this extension of the sidewalk here, right now it's 4.5 feet at its narrowest point. If there is a number of street posts along that edge, and as you may have experienced, the restaurants along that edge often put their trash out on the curb. And if you're ever moving someone or helping someone with a wheelchair, or perhaps in a wheelchair yourself, or have a stroller or something, it's impossible to pass another person on that sidewalk. 4 feet is the absolute minimum for a wheelchair, but you need 5 feet to turn. And it just turns out that this dimension is exactly the maximum length you can get. It's to have a run of that length. It's just not very welcoming. So we're always looking to expand that. Also, when we have this 9 feet, there is the possibility of putting a table and chairs outside on this edge, so that if you can imagine, if you've ever parked in the City Hall parking lot in the evening and want to go and dine in one of these restaurants along this edge, you walk across this kind of very dark area across. And if there are people out here dining, I think it would feel a lot more welcoming. As a female, perhaps I'm more aware of security issues, but it would be more welcoming to see other people and eyes on the plaza. And as you can see, we've done little to any of the planting along the edges. The Harmer adobe was here. We had incorporated that in an earlier concept, but that dropped out because of cost. It's unfortunate.
I think I'd also just say that the tenor of the discussions since really the beginning of this process, and more intensively in the last year, has been to understand the plaza as the living civic heart of the city that really extends from the facades of these important civic and community structures all the way across, encompassing the entire space and not simply the inner lawn. It also takes the position built on the assumption that given all of the plans, all of the designs, as we mentioned, the city engineer's plan, the Olmsted plan, the Craig and Smith ideas, as well as others over the decades, it also is built on the assumption that what is there now never really finished. The curb that exists now is a remnant of some of the street work that occurred when it was not a plaza, when there was a fire station and a city hall here. There also, over the years, we can see from photographs, and again, this is something that, given the revisions and expansions, it might happen to the historic report. There have been significant changes to this configuration on the inside, in our opinion, but never really realized, never really completed as a plaza. That's been the spirit of the work that has been undertaken by many in this room since 2006. That's just a very brief summary of this presentation, and many details, sections, and so forth, of course, are in this package, which we'd welcome you to refer to.
Actually, let's take a look at the sections. I think that might help some of the commissioners and some of the public to understand some of the things going on. So if you could maybe spend 3 or 4 minutes describing these sections, and then we'll move on to the next task.
Existing conditions across the center line, essentially from north to south, show De La Guerra Street, the planting, the agapanthus, and the other planting that occurs up here, then the lawn, then the roadway, and the news press. The second section, proposed, shows De La Guerra Street, shows the paving area that extends to essentially to the City Hall in the center area, then the lawn, trees in the background, and then you can see a bollard here separating the lawn and the paved area with a flat curb and a flat section of the street slightly raised to become a standard curb, and then a curb fronting the news press. Sections
C
section
is from here to
section
here.
C is on the existing, showing the street, and then proposed showing the street lined with lights, bollards, and trees, looking in this direction. And then lastly, section A, the existing condition, showing the lawn, the lamp, the raised curb, the street section, parking on this side, and showing essentially a 5-foot sidewalk, the little wall at the cafes, and then the cafe patio seating. Proposed section, the lawn, a flat curb, allowing stormwater drainage to the center, roadway, parking zone, with an extended sidewalk to 4.5 feet wider to a total of 9'6", showing universal access and the potential for outdoor cafe tables along the walls.
Okay. And then just lastly, if you could describe the bollard.
This would be a removable, retractable steel bollard of a design similar to the design of the existing lamp posts, within a 3-foot wide strip to accommodate barrier-free access.
And what are these little bumps?
Those are,
I know what they are, but
there's a so-called truncated dome paving system. We're specifying at this point a precast paver system in a color compatible with the rest of the design.
And just if I could ask a question.
Approximately 3 feet.
3 feet and width?
With at this point, I believe it's approximately 18 inches.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that concludes your presentation.
Actually, Mr. Chair, if I can clarify one item
You have a
as
minute
part of
to
this
do so.
presentation. I can do it less. The lawn, whereas Mr. Campbell recognized that the lowered lawn will also help address our stormwater requirements. It will be absorptive, but it is not designed to be
Retention or
retention. Exactly, it's not going to be bathtub there. The existing drain will continue.
Okay. All right. I will open public comment, and I have 2 letters from the public. One is from Mr. Lawrence Cook, and he is pleased to see the renovation happening. Another one is from Gerald Jackman, and I believe he is here today to speak. So I will not read your email, Mr. Jackman. And the first member of the public that we have to speak is Mr. Kellum DeForest, followed by Gerald Jackman. Mr. DeForest, if you...
Could I hear the rest of the...
Okay, I will put you at the end then. You are at the end. Mr. Jackman, followed by Sheila Lodge. If you could please ready yourself.
Sit down?
Yes, please. Or where, if you want to stand, just as long as your voice goes into the microphone. Please identify yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerald Jackman. I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. We have a keen interest in the plaza. We are the owners of the Casa de la Guerra. I do have a letter in, and the letters, an email that I sent in from our committee that we have at the Trust to review this. And basically, we see this heading in a better direction. One of the things that was missing from earlier plans was the city council mandate to show that there was connectivity between the Casa de la Guerra and the plaza, and we feel that has been addressed. We don't think this is perfect by any means from our perspective, but it is heading in a good direction. It's kind of interesting you're talking about the curbs. From our perspective, what is the prime period of importance? And we'd push it back a little bit further than the 1870s. We might go back to the 1820s to 1870s when there weren't any curbs there. So I don't think this hasn't been landmarked officially, I don't believe, the plaza, so that who is to say it hasn't really been decided what is really the prime periods. And so I'm not so sure that we would necessarily agree with the notion that the curbs are that critical for defining the plaza. a couple other things a little different from the letter. You know, I would point out we're not here to talk about the impact on businesses, but that is a big issue that's coming up. I would like you to think about the west side of the plaza where you have the scalloped areas. This plaza is one of the most lifeless places in Santa Barbara for various reasons. I'll let you decide why that is. And those businesses there have been out of business well before the Great Recession. We hear that one business could be coming back, so there isn't really a public place there that's bringing people in. And so what's happening there now, is it because there's events there that's causing this to happen? I would think there were other reasons, and I hope that you will consider that. We're also wondering about the grass. I think right now you go by the plaza today and you'll see what's there. It's closed off. It's going to be closed off for 5 weeks while this grass heals from the events there. So you cannot have a public space, and we assume that this is a public space, while you have grass there, because this is what's going to happen. Cinco de Mayo wears out. Now we have that infamous dirt on our property. We had the big events there, just like they did at Fiesta. We had the De La Guerra reunion there 2 weeks before. We had a wine festival there like 3 weeks before that. We've had 2 wedding receptions in the last month and a half, and it's open. It's not closed off. So if we're going to have a space that's going to be public, you really have to think about that in a design. And somehow, when you go back to history, you can say, well, there's been grass there for 85 years, but while it was a plaza for another at least 75 or 80 years without dirt or without grass. So the upshot of this for me and for our committee is that we are actually at the Trust bringing the plaza to life by using various things that we do, and these include activities in areas where the public can come and go and not have it shut off, as will happen again with this current plan if all this grass stays. So we still are hoping that you will take a hard look at how much grass is there on this plan, but we do like a lot of the features of it. And I would point out, again, that the prime period of curbs, in your mind, maybe you should push it back to an earlier period and think that there weren't curbs there before 1924, or is it 1874?
Thank you, Mr. Jackman. Ms. Lodge, followed by Marty Blum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies for not having read all the way through the agenda.
That's okay. It happens.
I'd like to share with you a 1985 postcard. There should be enough copies for each of you. That shows De La Guerra Plaza as it was then, as it was when I was in office, when I was on the Planning Commission, and it probably goes back to the period of significance, that this is the way that it was. There was no parking on the City Hall side of the grassy area, and there were benches, and it was a place that was used by the public. I was dismayed when I arrived one day to see the parking. It arrived mysteriously, as did the electrical panel. Staff has not been able to find records on. I know Public Works put it in, but just how it all got there isn't really known. Well, that seems to be the case with that parking on the grass side, the central portion. And actually, former Mayor Marty Blum is here. We had a conversation when she was first elected, and we considered going out and buying a can of red paint and painting it red again to get rid of that parking. When that happened, the back of this postcard describes this as a spacious area, and the parking created a wall. The benches were taken away, and people just walk across it now. Nobody uses it on a daily basis. And I urge the Commission to recommend that parking be removed. I know it's a big issue for the business people. I talked this morning with Randy Rouse, Councilmember Randy Rouse, who, of course, is very active with the downtown organization. He can't participate in this discussion because his cafe is within 500 feet of the Placita. But I said, how would it work do you think it would be okay if instead of removing the 3 parking spaces next to the Placida, and I have walked in between the cars parked there hundreds of times, and I know it would be nice not to have them there, but it would be better to leave those and remove the parking that is on the City Hall side of the, but next to the lawn area. And he said he could support that. So I would like to urge you, again, I'm delighted that electrical panel is going away, the improvements that are proposed. I don't have strong feelings one way or another about the curb. But I think, as Mayor Schneider said yesterday, making it more user-friendly would be more likely to bring back people to use it. And what happened when the wall of cars was allowed and the benches taken away, like it surrendered the plaza to the people with problematic behavior. And I think making it more user-friendly, I've had at least one downtown worker bemoan the fact that he can no longer take his lunch and go sit on a bench there and eat his lunch. If you get the general populace back there, I think it would improve and bring life back to the plaza. So that is what I would like to urge you to do, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lodge. Ms. Bloom, followed by Kai Sushi Restaurant.
We're a 1-2 marathon here. This is good. No, I'm really glad that this is moving forward, and want to thank all of you for your long work on this. In 2002, I took this plaza to the Mayor's Design Institute in South Carolina and thought, oh, good, this is just an easy, small project. So here we are 10 years later, and it's still a good project, I believe. I think it needs to be cleaned up, and we're getting there very well. Just wanted to talk about 2 things. The tent, the big tent. I believe, and I could be wrong because memories, do funny things, but I believe it happened when the light post fell over in the Mercado. There was a light post that just fell over. Miracle, nobody was hurt. But it had been eroded and so on. And the next one next to it found to be the same way, although it didn't fall over. So we fixed those. And we just put meaning Public Works, put the lighting into a tent, the electrical panel into a tent, knowing that it was going to be fixed. So that's a temporary thing, and I know it's expensive to move it, but I think it'll look so much better. And the second thing is the parking on the inner loop. I can't remember, I got on the council in January 1996. I don't remember if I was on the council or planning commission, but truly over the weekend, it happened because it happened. There was no city council approval. There was no HLC approval, nothing. The mayor just decided we needed more parking. And honestly, I'm not disparaging her, but she decided we needed more parking, and George Girth got his guys out there to paint the curb. And so that's what happened. And my mouth dropped open. I think I was on the council because I was coming through there. And I think it looked terrible at the time because it took away that feeling of safety. It took away that feeling that you want to sit in there. And there used to be concerts there on Friday noon, I think it was, maybe Thursday or Friday. And it was wonderful. You could go there, sit down, have your lunch, and that's what we need to bring back. I tried to bring it back in my first term, but honestly, not too many people wanted to be there. So we had a couple concerts and moved on. But I really think the inner, this would be the commission to recommend the inner parking go. So, and remember, you've got parking. You've got parking across the street. You've got parking at Lot 10. You've got parking at the Libero lot. So, I just think that's where you should be headed. Besides all the other stuff you're doing. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ms. Blum. Kai Sushi Restaurant, followed by, I believe it's Dennis Rickham? Rickard. Dennis Rickard. Ricard. Dennis Ricard.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. I have a few questions because of the patio being facing De La Guerra, right at Kai Sushi. That's one of the, that is the only restaurant. Yes. And, well, I'm sorry, you're pointing to the smaller, next to.
This is Kai.
That's right.
Okay. thank you.
And it's in the adjacent building to the attorney's office, so would that be next to it? Right there, okay. So the wall that you're planning to take down or move back, it's going to stay?
It's going to stay just where it is.
And the option is we can put a patio on that sidewalk or no? Because it sounds like it's for handicap access and...
This is not a discussion.
I'm sorry.
That's
Oh.
okay. No,
Okay.
we understand your
Just-
questions.
uh-huh.
I'm going to suggest that you get with staff, either Ms. Limon or
Mhm.
Mr. Aguilar,
Mhm.
and ask them the questions. We're trying to reserve this for any comments you might have regarding this.
Okay,
So-
then my comment about doing what you plan to do, would we still put the trash cans outside?
That's a question.
Yeah, okay. Because it sounds like if you're going to go through all this, you would want to have an area where you could
So your comment is you would like,
to see
an area
some,
for
yes,
trash.
and I asked, I went around 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. We've been there 11 years, and I, right from the get-go, tried to find who would I talk to designate a trash area, and it has gone downhill since we've been there. I've seen it get worse and worse and worse. The security is better now because anyway, it's just needs, it's gone downhill, and I'm sorry to see that it looks so terrible while you're taking, 10 years to decide what to do with it. It's a shame to have all our tourists come and look at De La Guerra Plaza look like that right now. But
Can I get your name for the record?
Yes, Virginia.
Virginia?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you. So my question was...
What last name? The staff would like your last name.
Okay, Sato.
S-A-T-O?
Correct.
Thank you, Virginia.
Uh-huh. So I have to talk to someone else about the tables or...
Yes.
Okay.
And that person is sitting right next to you or right there in the audience. Okay. Ms. Limon will field your questions, but that would have to be after the presentation.
All right.
Okay.
And then my issue about the garbage cans will be taken into
They'll listen to that as well.
Okay.
And we've heard it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Ricard, pardon me, followed by Mr. DeForest. Mr. Ricard.
Yes, my name's Dennis Ricard, and my family owns the Arania Adobe on the corner. I'm speaking in opposition to this size of change to De La Guerra Plaza. There's no question some work needs to be done. It needs to be done in the streets, on the sidewalks, and so forth. But we believe that it's still, if not in actuality, it is de facto a historical landmark. I agree with you regarding the curbs. I know that they've probably been there for over 100 years, since my grandmother probably went around that loop in her carriage and probably dealt with them. And I've been very concerned about the leveling of the curbs to the street, because I think it's kind of an open door to close it to parking. I think that's kind of this is the start. This was the big fight a few years ago, and the news press stepped up to the plate with their attorney and stopped it. Okay? I believe that that's where they're headed now. The businesses, a few years ago, our tenant went around and got 80 businesses to sign a petition to leave the parking alone. Okay? A lot of businesses there use it. As far as the concern about the homeless, we agree with that. I believe that if you take parking out completely, you will create a void, and I think the lowest common denominator will fill it. And I'm very concerned about that, as I know my family is as a landlord. Okay? I just think it's kind of an extreme makeover. I think it can be done in what they call fix-its, which is what was in, it was October of 2004. And then this a group of folks here expanded it way beyond that, and now we've been looking at this. I really believe that, again, the curbs is a big issue. I'm concerned about I believe it looks like about a quarter of it's going to be concrete, from what I can see. I do know also I'm the board of directors of Old Spanish Days, and I spoke to the vice president of Mercados, and he voiced quite a bit of concern about move the sidewalk toward the restaurants closer out, then and still have parking and still have cars, that they're going to have to narrow the loop, okay, the area, and therefore potentially have all our nonprofits redo their booths to be able to fit in order to continue Mercado, which, by the way, I want to let you know, my father started Mercado at 49 as El Presidente.
In 1949?
Yeah, it was going on before then, but he got it regoing in 1949.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you for that bit of information.
So that's. I hope you'll give a really close look at this. We're very concerned that this is just too big of a makeover right now.
Thank you, Mr. Ricard. Mr. DeForest.
Oh, I think Kellum DeForest, I think I can agree that the parking that's suddenly on the plaza side of the courthouse, I mean the city hall, front steps, suddenly appeared. I think that information, I thought maybe I wondered how it appeared with nobody knowing about it. I mean, with no public hearing. So, I think it would be a plus to remove that. I would like more study made of the curve, which are pretty historic, but there may be reasons for handicapped access and safety in this day and age, but I think they serve a purpose and possibly even serve a purpose in servicing the Mercado when the Mercados are put up. I would like to see a uniform surface for the plaza of some kind. I mean, if it's going to be grass, it should be all grass. If it's going to be paved, it should be all paved with one kind of pavement. It gets. My father, Lockwood DeForest, didn't like the eye being distracted by busyness, so I think that would be a help. Also, I guess we'll have to get rid of the bumps before we can have seating back in the plaza. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Having no more public comment and bring it to the commission. Any questions from the commission? Mr. Schallenberger? Okay, Mr. Drury?
Yes. Chair?
Yes.
This is assuming you can read my writing. I'm assuming from these plans there's no mention of the streetlights that are existing, so they will be eliminated? No, they will stay. The historic streetlights.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, they may be relamped with more efficient.
However,
they may be relamped with more efficient and brighter luminaires. The plan shows the row of lights on the westerly side being moved approximately 4 feet to accommodate the shift in the roadway location. That's correct.
And another question is, you're expanding the sidewalk on the west side to accommodate foot traffic and to give a place for the back of businesses, the restaurants along the west side, a chance to have tables and...
Correct.
And there will be still parking along
Correct.
that side? Thank you.
Yes, if I could just comment about the potential for outdoor dining along the larger sidewalk on the western side. That raises several policy issues, including city charter question about parkland being used for commercial purposes. So there's several huge obstacles to placing the tables on the sidewalk, but the Campbells feel strongly that it would be a great attribute for the plaza, so we're continuing to show it as a concept.
Thank you.
But it's not a simple fix.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
And the sidewalk coming up to 9 feet downtown, I believe it's encouraged that sidewalks be at least 12 feet wide. So this is smaller, of course, narrower than that, but 9 feet is a decent size of a sidewalk. So if you're walking with a friend or walking, you can pass other people as you walk. It's a traditional size.
So the assumption then is that if the sidewalk is that wide to accommodate this plan, there will still be plenty of room to park a vehicle and to drive a vehicle down around the loop?
Absolutely. The roadway's kept the same width.
Thank you.
Essentially.
Any more questions, Mr. Drury? No, I'm good. Thank you. Mr. Lavoie, questions?
Where is the flagpole being relocated and the monument sign?
The flagpoles and the monuments, the flagpoles are being relocated to the right, to the left-hand side of the City Hall as you face the City Hall. And the monument location has not yet been completely finalized. We are assuming this is a work in progress. We look forward to this input, but the monument, we presume, is located in the same general area or perhaps on this side, given the identity of the plaza, as has been discussed, as the whole space, not simply the green lawn in the center.
To clarify, the flagpoles...
That's fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to know where they were.
plaza.
Okay.
And what are you doing about the trash?
There's been quite a long conversation about the trash, and perhaps I'll, if you don't mind, deferring to Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lavoie, and I guess I'm speaking to one of the previous folks who asked about that. Early on in our approach to this project, we were searching for, and we wanted to include trash enclosure area, and we explored that option. We looked at potential, it's a difficult site. We looked at Stork Placida, kind of the interface between the U Road and the entrance to Stork Placida there, where there's some roses now. We considered the City Hall parking lot as a potential option. But with both of those, we had some operational issues. If you have it across the plaza in the City Hall parking lot, you're conveying trash and whatever falls or drips out of there across the plaza. If you have it at Stork Placida, you have less of that being an issue. However, you do have the aroma that is generated. And then we started looking at, do you have an enclosed enclosure or an open enclosure? And an open one would draw pests, rodents, seagulls. If you have it closed, you end up baking the bread that's in there, so to speak. And so therefore, what we did is we met with the downtown organization and a Marburg representative, and we walked the area along State Street, 700 block of State Street there on the opposite side of the U Road, and the businesses, and we tried to see if just operationally they could address their own trash on their own site. And we spoke with a number of businesses, and they were able to, they said they could leave it in there, in their back patios, or if they're on State Street, I think it's Pinkberry, they have like a wrought iron gate that they were able to give the key to Marburg. So they were operationally able to address this, and that got dropped out of the project.
Any other questions, Commissioner Lavoie? Commissioner Murray, any questions?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher?
I do have one question.
Commissioner Arias?
I have a couple of questions. One for staff. In looking at the description of the project, I find that there is no mention of the moving of the monument or the flagpoles.
I understand that, yes. This isn't a complete description. We will have one more in any staff report or other reports, but this is sort of the summary of the project.
Okay, well, since this is circulated for staff, for public, it should be a complete description. Otherwise, we're talking about something that is technically not on the agenda, which is not a good idea.
We can update that.
Yeah. The flagpoles and the monument are of concern to me. the reason that is given is it opens the plaza, et cetera. Have you considered moving all of the flagpoles over directly in front of City Hall, which would be the governmental building, instead of over on the side?
Well, this location, which fronts the entrance of City Hall, was thought to be a more visible and more prominent location than the location on the City Hall side of the roadway.
No, I think you misunderstand my question.
Please.
Let me make sure my thing is on, because I never remember. Oh, it's on. When I look at your map, the flagpoles are not in front of the City Hall steps going up. They're more toward De La Guerra. And I was saying move it directly in front of the thing, of City Hall. Well, there's a tree, yes, but we're talking across the road from that. Also, have you considered that?
We've looked at a number of locations for the American flag and the other two flagpoles in this zone, and we selected this zone as a part of this design, as it gives good visibility of the flagpoles from the State Street approach to the plaza, and also gives good visibility of the flagpoles from this direction, and is far enough away from the tree to give these, in our opinion, a highly prominent place.
Okay. Then my next question rests with the curbs, or the removal of the curbs. Have you had any discussion regarding the safety factor of cars no longer having to park next to a curb, which will limit where their access is, but they will park further and further in and end up on the plaza area, the edge of the plaza? I'm not saying they're going to be driving on the plaza, but you understand what I'm saying.
The area where parking is shown on this side, as well as around the loop, right, is separated from the plaza by the steel bollards and the lamps, and the strip of universal access paving, and the steel bollards, and the palm trees, which also run along the side.
So you do not envision that you think that will be sufficient enough to prevent the cars from coming into that area? All right.
Yeah, just to elaborate, just very briefly, and again, please, Mr. Chairman, let me know if this is a more appropriate response for later. But we've looked at many of these issues related to use, programming, parking, things that change and move and are relocated. We've looked at the flow of pedestrian and car traffic throughout the site, day and night, over the everyday life, as we said, of the place, as well as the life of the mercados. I've had extensive discussions and lots of opportunities to look at this as a part of the project, 6 or 7 fiestas now, and Cinco de Mayos. And we believe that this infrastructure, that this basic armature, this basic layout of space, the 9-foot sidewalk, the curb, the flat roadway, and the central lawn, is the most optimally flexible, the safest, and the most, how can we say, the most resonant with this being, for now over 150 years and more, a plaza, a living place for people, as well as cars.
That's helpful.
May
you know what I need? Okay, yes, no, I'm sorry, she's got the floor now. This is Commissioner Arias.
One more question, and in your consideration of where you were going to put the monument, it's my recollection that there is also a monument now in around where the drinking fountain is, correct?
Yes, right in here.
Yes. Yeah, and where...
The drinking fountain itself is a monument, as we know.
I understand that. Have you said you were it was still under consideration where you're going to place that?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a subtlety we want to make sure that it's right, and that it's prominent, and that the monument is seen and it's remembered. But the whole place, in a sense, needs to express the values and the history and the heritage of the city, of our community. So the monument is a important, essential detail, but we need to understand it in the whole context of this space.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah, I just
Mr. Murray?
what kind of turf are you putting, or is that too early?
Well, no, it's not. This speaks to the issue of sustainability and use. And again, turf is something that is shown in the plan now. We don't know how expensive water is going to be in the future. We have designed this space, this basic container of space, this plaza, to capture stormwater, using and to exchange oxygen through the earth, to be the most sustainable and the most efficient possible. The type of turf will be selected as it evolves. There's new types of turf coming on all the time to be in keeping with that strong ethic of sustainability.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Okay, Mr. Schellenberger, go ahead. Question.
So, programmatically, you didn't consider decomposed granite at all, or was that ever a consideration?
Yes, it was a consideration, and I think we believe that decomposed granite could be an optional surface with advantages. I believe that, and again, I would defer to Mr. Aguilar if I'm not recalling this correctly, but I believe that the Parks Department expressed some concerns about its ability to maintain decomposed granite consistent with public safety in a high-traffic area. Although we do know, and you may know, we have designed, we've been fortunate to be involved with the design of many plazas and public places throughout the world. We have found that decomposed granite can be maintained adequately, although in this case the Parks Department felt that it was not within their
Anything to
policy.
add to that, Mr. Aguilar? Quickly? No. Okay. Question?
And this may take a couple of parts of this question. Did I just hear right that public works work was done without a permit and without any kind of study as far as impact on historic resources? Okay,
Which portion of public work, I'm sorry?
The parking spaces that were added. Okay, so follow up to that is there an enforcement case in place to deal with that? No, I'm not kidding. If you tried to do that on one of your properties, you'd have a ZIR in place and an enforcement case.
I think we have a response from staff. Ms. Gantz?
Well, Commissioner Schellenberger, the enforcement is complaint driven, so if you would like to submit a complaint, we would then process it into an enforcement case.
Okay, so and then would that then be this project be subject to that enforcement case being cleared before going forward?
No.
Okay, be separate. Any other questions, Mr. Schellenberger?
No.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to clarify, the tent structure in the De La Guerra Plaza?
The temporary tent?
The temporary tent was approved
Yes,
on January 7th?
I remember approving
okay.
it. Based on the fact that it was going to be temporary. Okay, temporary, we tried to define at that time, and apparently that definition went out the window.
May I make
Commissioner
one
Arias.
short comment?
Comment or question?
It's going to be a comment.
Okay,
Decomposed
say-
granite is very hard to push a wheelchair over.
I have a couple of questions, if I may, if everybody else is done. You have a raised curb here and then a flush curb here.
Right.
How does that transition to the flush curb work from the raised? Are you?
At the sidewalk, really, as it comes around here.
And
No, I'm sorry. Maybe you're not understanding. This is raised curb along De La Guerra, and then you transition to a flush curb.
Here's the grade change happens in this location.
Okay, so the top of the curb is
just dives.
It dives,
Yes.
daylights in,
Yes.
or okay.
You know, it's a very prosaic example, but if you go out to Goleta to the El Camino Marketplace, the area where they have a number of shops and used to be Borders and the cinemas, that area has a similar condition that's
great.
used every day.
Then the last question is, do you feel that the removal of the curb and the installation of bollards is respecting the historical context of this plaza?
Without question. This is 10 years of very close observation here, not only of the living place, but of historic documents both in the public realm as well as at the university. With response also to a reference to a question that came up earlier relative to the unbuilt ideas of Craig and G.W. Smith and Ludereg's, absolutely, as well as a close look at the Olmsted plan, not the city engineer's plan, but the earlier plan from which it was derived. We see bollards and chain. We see flush curb. We see photographs of flush curb at the city hall, actually.
For one reason or another, those are never built.
We completely understand. We see and echo the Liz Limon has a copy of this marvelous book here.
I've got a copy as well.
We see this 10-year effort, this 12-year effort, as a continuation of really an aspiration to complete and express this place.
Okay. I appreciate your response. Thank you. Commissioner Schallenberger, any comments?
Yes. Generally speaking, I don't see how this is not an impact to the historic setting. The change to the plaza it will feel different in this plaza if this plan were to go forward. I'm glad we had the discussion and have tabled the report because my views on the curb lowering or removal have softened because of the presentation. I can see that the curb may not necessarily be historic in nature and that it could go down. But the problem is, this leads to a more specific point. When you do that and you have to have these detectable warnings, when you have a 0-inch curb face, now you're into a very different feel of the place. And if you don't think so, go by Whole Foods sometime, where the entire length of that is a 0-inch curb face. And maybe the city's changed the policy since, but it was bright yellow, no other color acceptable. So maybe in a historic setting you can get an exemption. I don't know. Well, I'll let you answer that afterward. But
it's not a question, but
If you want to make it into a question, I have a response.
no, we're in comments now.
Let me just get through the comments first. Even if it isn't yellow, bright yellow in color, it still has a different feel. To run the perimeter with this band is going to feel very different from how it's traditionally and historically been set. So I guess what happens here is the plaza has been evolving over time, clearly. That all you have to do is look at the photos that were presented. But the question, I guess, is moving forward, are we going to just change the plaza? And I don't know that I'm totally against that. There are plenty of examples of hundreds-of-year-old cities throughout Europe and all over the world that have hardscaped plazas, and that's perfectly acceptable for a plaza. But then make that decision and then go forward. This plan is sort of a half step. It's almost a hardscaped traditional European plaza, but not really. It's kind of in between a landscaped plaza and a hardscaped plaza. And that sort of leads to the paving that I see here. I'm not sure that it works exactly. I don't know if this is just a politically correct thing to have the cross have sort of a stub at the top, where we don't want to commit to a full cross there for whatever political reasons, but it seems like it wants to capture the grouping of palm trees anyway, proportionally. And then at the head of, or the south end of the plaza, the semicircle, I'm not sure logistically with stages and that type of use if the stage is going to want to straddle that. Just laying out a small 20 by 40 footprint there, it's pretty much right up against the semicircle there. So I'm not sure proportionally if the paving pattern is working.
You mean the paving layout?
Sorry, paving layout. Thank you. And then just a quick comment on the monument. I don't know that moving the monument from its current location is even necessary. It's a fairly small monument to get around. The plaza is not axial with Casa de la Guerra across the street anyway, so there wouldn't be that. There isn't a relationship problem to resolve without, well, let's just say that. Anyway, that wraps up my comments. And if you could answer the thing about the detectable warning strip
in
color.
30 seconds or less, please.
Yeah, Commissioner Schallenberger, we have done extensive research on detectable warning poured in place as well as precast. We've had conversations about the contrast that's necessary. In short, the bright yellow will not be a factor here. We hope to find, we strive to find something that keeps that edge as subtly as possible, that the roadway and the banding and the bollards all work together, and the edge that will be seen will be the edge between the turf and the driving zone, the paved zone.
Thank
So
you,
we
Mr.
don't have
Campbell.
that.
Thank you. Mr. Drury, any comments?
I think that De La Guerra Plaza needs some help, but I think this is much too much help.
Out of subcommittee. Just kidding.
And I would there's a couple of things I would support, which is the no parking along the plaza side of the plaza itself, where it was illegally painted into a parking configuration. I do not support in any way the losing of the curb. I think that what it does is it trivializes the plaza. It makes it less of a place and sort of just some place that happens to be in between a building and City Hall. And I think the formal aspect of the curb is really important to the plaza itself. I would support some configuration changing of the lawn area. I don't support at all the moving of the monument or the flagpoles. I drove through there last night about 8:30 after sunset, and it's really a lovely prospect from the News Press building and from De La Guerra itself. I would support, I suppose, the widening of the sidewalk. That's the one part of the plaza that needs help, is from the attorney's building to the Placida. And it's been kind of a sore place. Yeah, it's been a sore spot visually because it's a back of business in general. And if those businesses can figure out a way to deal with the trash receptacles and actually use that part of the plaza, it would certainly revitalize the western side. The eastern side doesn't need any revitalization. It's got City Hall, a parking lot that's hidden by the wall where the Harmer Adobe used to be, and then the News Press building, which while we may not enjoy the ownership of the News Press, the building itself is fantastic. One of the great buildings in Santa Barbara. I think the addition of bollards is one of those things that, as Mayor Lodge suggested, the view of the plaza is about space. When you add bollards and chains and lower the curb, I think it clutters the space up. And I think it would be a terrible mistake to put bollards in and to take the curb out. And if I can, and the other thing, two things. I'd like to say that I think the prime period of historic importance is right now. It's 2011, not some place that none of us can remember. I go back to 1945 when I was born, and we live in we don't live in a museum, we live in a city, a living city. And I think the prime period of importance is right now. And I also would like to question how much this project is going to cost the city in these troubled times economically. And I would say too much. That's my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Drury. Commissioner Lavoie.
I would agree with one of Commissioner Drury's comments that the prime period of interpretation should be now. I've been on the commission for years, and most of those years discussing this plaza in excruciating detail and looking at all of the prior proposals and trying to come up with a current proposal that solved all of the political mess that is this plaza and all of the stakeholders and vested interests who seem to think this parking belongs to them. At last, a plan. I like the simplicity of your design. I think it speaks to the strength of the space. I support the widening of the sidewalk. I wish it was wider. I wish it allowed for some landscaping against the sidewalk and the buildings. It somewhat concerns me that I'm seeing paved areas totally to the wall. The example of what has been done on State Street, I think, is a prime example of how to address tenant concerns and owner concerns and how to frame the entrances of their buildings with landscaping. And I think it should be done here also. A major issue for me is the flagpole. It is being moved from a prime position to what I consider an extremely secondary position. It should be in the middle of this plaza. It should be in the crossing if you're going to do a crossing. And my first reaction to the design was the walkway that comes off of De La Guerra, the Casa De La Guerra and De La Guerra Street. No, the middle one. No, the cross. Just looks like a half an idea. Without apologies, it looks like a half an idea. There needs to be something at the end of it, or it needs to end some way with not just we ran out of concrete and this is the end. It needs to have a reason for being there. I mean, other than a walkway for the city attorney to the mayor's office and back and forth. The flag in the middle. If you've ever taken down a big flag, you want all the pavement around it you want. You don't want to be crawling through the bushes to get the flag down. The monument, I could really care less about. It should probably move in front of, and more appropriate, in front of City Hall. Parking. And I've heard all of the arguments for why there should be parking here. There shouldn't be any parking here at all. Period. None. There should be a vehicular access that is necessary for both the property owners around for their businesses and for the events that happen here. But no parking at all. The trash situation has always been a problem that needs to be really solved. There needs to be some accommodation and not just in someone's patio next to outside dining. I think the businesses who front this should be really encouraged to turn their back on State Street and their front to De La Guerra Plaza and encourage them as much as we can with outside dining. I don't have an issue with the curb removal on the middle. I've seen European plazas that were defined by bollards. They're fine. The bollards tend to disappear visually. However, if you're blocked from entering the plaza by a car, that's a major obstacle. That's an obstacle. The bollard disappears. And the grass, I've heard that argument forever. And I remember with former Mayor Lodge that when the Sunday concerts were on the park and it was the park, you'd go sit on the grass and have your lunch and working people downtown, ate lunch there and listened to the music. It was a wonderful venue for downtown. And this will change the historic character of the park, of the plaza rather. Thank God. It's about time.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavoie. Commissioner Murray, any comments? You're on now.
I agree with Commissioner Lavoie's one comment about the cars. I really think should once and for all give back the park, the plaza, to all the people and leave it. I agree that there should be vehicle access for the different functions and for the merchants. And I also support the improvement on the west side of the plaza, the sidewalk. I agree with the comment that it just, to me, it's just a lot of hardscape, and I think some kind of a pleasant other landscape that go along with the restaurants. But I think that can be left to you and the people, I guess, whatever they want. I'm not crazy about the bollards. I have a feeling they would change it to be a very contemporary, a very contemporary space. Whereas right now, all the quirks about it, you could still feel that 87 years ago feeling. There's a feeling of the historic part of it. But so I guess you just have to be careful about all the sort of new contemporary things that you're going to be putting in. This part, I'm not sure how it's going to work. I don't really know. I don't have a great suggestion for it, but and I'm sure you heard the other comments, so maybe you'll work on it. I sort of don't know what you had intended for that. If I'm coming to the park, what is that supposed to be? Is that a place to sit, a place to greet me, a formal place, a not formal place? What am I supposed to feel when I get in there? Am I sort of directing to the city hall or to the News Press building? In other words, is that entry to the park from the De La Guerra Street that I'm not getting at? And I just don't think it should be just because De La Guerra House is there, it shouldn't be just say, oh, well, this is the connection. I don't see that connection because I feel like since it's part of the public now, it should serve the public. And the road differentiates you from there anyway, and it has its own sense of that front. So I guess I feel like that this should be more of a public, something to tell you that you are in front of the city hall and you've entered a special space before you come and sit down in this area for having lunch or whatever. The flag, I think that should be pretty prominent. Somewhere in the middle of the plaza or somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in the middle where and that's what I was thinking about that. If you create something in here that revolves around the flag in that sense of this is not, I've entered the plaza, but this is the city hall, and I don't know whether the flag could be part of that. The monument, I'm sure you'll find a place for it. I don't think the monument needs to be next to the flag, and it's nice, and stone monument could be put elsewhere. But I just feel this part is not working for me. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Boucher, any comments differing from comments that have been made?
Well, I agree with the
Or
comments
agreements.
made by Bill Lavoie, especially as far as the east sidewalk. No, the west. I've never been able to tell the difference. I'm amazed that there haven't been suits about people falling on that. So anything you can do to improve that would be a major plus for the city, I would think. I basically support this plan. I think it's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The bollards are fine.
Thank you, Commissioner.
They go back way back, historically.
You done?
Yes.
Thank you,
I'm
Commissioner.
finished.
Commissioner Rios, please.
Thank you. I think it will take a charter amendment, a vote of the people, to allow commercial operation on park land, if I remember correctly. So the question about the tables onto park area is a very iffy thing because the charter is very clear on that. I would like to see the parking near City Hall removed. I would like to see the return of benches in the area. As far as the curbs, I think I would prefer a low curb as opposed to the chain and the bollards. And I like the sidewalk widened, but I think in the side of the plaza, there's too much paving, and that's not necessary. And again, I feel very strongly about the flag. I'm sorry, what?
Take out the road.
I would like to see the flags remain in their present location. I think that is appropriate. I think it needs, the whole project in general needs to be somewhat softened and more user-friendly. And I'm not sure with what you're proposing here is going to be user-friendly. So getting back benches, getting back events in the area and things like that are important to make this more of a people place. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rios. I have just a few comments, and then we're going to wrap this up because we still have to deal with the historic structures report. So you should hear the battle that's going on in my head. And I'm sure it's gone on in yours as well. The elimination of the curb is extremely problematic to me because it changes the spatial definition of this plaza. I understand why you are doing it. I think it's laudable. I think it's sustainable, but I just can't support it just because it changes the spatial relationship. That's all. Commissioner Jury?
I'd like to pursue the one question about the cost of this project.
I don't know if Mr. Aguilar is prepared to answer that quickly.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Drury, we had an estimate on the project about 2 years ago, I think 2.5 years ago, and at that time when we were looking at it, the estimated cost at that time frame for what we were proposing was about $2.2 million when you include the design, the construction, and the project management. It's probably a similar cost now. It just depends what the final result is and what the bidding environment is like.
Thank you. Okay, then you have your comments. You're on your way. Thank you. I will reopen item number 4, the Historic Structures Report of De La Guerra Plaza. I thank all members of the public who have hung out and stayed with us on this. If you want to hear the outcome of the Historic Structures Report, you can stick around some more. Commissioner Challenger?
Accept the report.
Do we need a motion to open it again?
No, you never closed.
It was tabled.
Just tabled it. Okay, so you make a motion to approve the report as submitted with the corrections that we've mentioned. Sorry. We have a motion by Schallenberger, second by Lavoie. All in favor?
May we hear the motion, please?
Move to accept the report as submitted.
Period.
Well, with comments.
With the comments that have been made today.
Mr. Chair,
Okay. Gabriella, do you have the comments at all from the Historic Structures report? From item 4.
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
I'm Melissa Hetrick, environmental analyst with the Planning Division. I just wanted to take a brief moment, if I could, to discuss impact analysis and historic structures reports and the whole issue of significance.
Go ahead.
So as you guys may recall, because I'm sure other environmental analysts have discussed this with you, that the impact analysis in historic structures reports is not based on conformance with design guidelines or EPV guidelines and all that kind of stuff, but it's based on whether the project is significant as it relates to the definition in the state of California CEQA guidelines. So I just wanted to go through those because it's a little bit different than, say, our local design guidelines. And
this is fairly quick.
This will be quick. So according to CEQA, there's a significant impact on historic resources if the resource is materially altered in an adverse manner that affects those physical characteristics of the historic resource that convey its historical significance and justify its eligibility for inclusion in the California Register of Historic Resources and the local register. And in this case, we've got a historic structures report that is saying that the plaza as a whole is historic, not per se the curb around the grass in and of itself isn't historic, but is part of the whole, and that the removal of the curb would be less than significant. If the commission chooses to disagree with that conclusion, CEQA requires us to submit very specific evidence as to why the state CEQA threshold that I just read would be exceeded, and to also look at in detail potential mitigation measures for lowering the impact level to less than significant. And if at the end of all that, the impact is still determined to be significant, unavoidable, then the analysis would have to be further looked at in an EIR, an environmental impact report, and an alternatives analysis done in that report that would look at other project designs that would not have the same significant impact. And if after all that, we still had a significant unavoidable impact, the project could not be approved without a statement of overriding considerations for the project that made a finding that there were no feasible alternatives for accomplishing the goals of this project that would also lessen the environmental impact and historic impact of the project. So as we're moving through this discussion, I just want to make sure the commission is clear about the distinction with the state regulations and kind of what we're looking at right now in the impact report.
Very much appreciated. Commissioner Schellenberger.
My understanding is that CEQA is not the only measure of compliance. There's still the ordinance that not only any report or project that comes through needs to meet the standards set forth in the ordinance, which there's a summary up there on the wall, but I don't think that we're necessarily accepting the report only on CEQA basis. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the significance determinations in the report are based only for CEQA. Design review compatibility analysis is for design review, compliance with design review guidelines. And that's actually what the concept review is for. That's why it's separated out specifically for that reason. And I think you'll want to put in the historic structures report any information that you need for your other decisions as well. But when it comes down to the actual project impact analysis and whether or not it's significant, that is a CEQA term. And you could say that an impact is adverse, but not significant as it relates to the state CEQA guidelines, but it's still adverse. And that you could make a decision at design review stage that because of those adverse conditions that you're not going to approve it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it rises to the level of significance as it relates to the state.
Thank you. Okay, so we had a motion by Schellenberger, a second by Lavoie. you feel comfortable summarizing the comments, Commissioner Schellenberger?
No.
Mr. Lavoie?
No, I don't think comments were summarized. The original motion was to accept the report as written.
Okay. I thought there were. Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Opposed.
We have 4 opposition. Motion fails. Is that 4?
That was 3.
Did you vote? How did you vote?
3.
I'm going to vote
In favor? Okay, so then the motion carries. So who opposed?
I did.
Arias, Suding, and Drury. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
May I ask a question of
Yes.
staff? In view of what you have just said, we are not precluded from denying certain aspects of this project in our decision-making that have been found either not significant. We still have the authority to be able to deny certain things, correct?
Yeah, so yes.
Yeah, that's all
So
I
it would
needed.
be just like any other project.
Yeah,
Okay.
You
the
can't
CEQA would
you
be
can't have that
separate,
window
yeah.
there, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay, moving along.
Have a break.
Yeah, I am actually going to call for a recess, for a 10-minute recess, and I apologize to the next applicant, but we've been going at breakneck speed, and we need to rest, and it'll benefit you. Next item on the agenda is item number 6, 117 West Mason Street. I appreciate the applicant being patient and bearing with us on this. Do we have any staff comments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I will read the minutes from the last meeting, which was, I believe, we did a historic structures report on August 3rd, and we did a concept review on May 11th. Wow, was it that long ago? Yes, it was. Okay. This was comments only. It required environmental assessment, staff hearing officer review of a zoning modification, and coastal review. This was in May of 2011. The motion continued indefinitely with the following comments. Support was expressed for the restoration of the window screen, the matching of the simplicity of building style, and the side yard setback encroachment modifications in an attempt to make continuous wall planes as appropriate in the style of architecture. Restudy the integration of the addition into the existing structure. Of concern is the size of the second-story addition as currently proposed and its impact on both the neighborhood and the existing structure. It was recommended that the architect and the owner see the property originally designed by Mary Osborne Craig and altered by Mark Shields located at 2100 Laguna Street for inspiration on second-story additions. Number 5, provide profile sections of adjoining structures, including those to the rear. Number 6, retain the design of the existing chimney in the new chimneys. The exterior expression of the existing chimney should remain. So did you get your modification, or
I can't until I come to you and get positive comments.
Oh.
So it has
There we
been a
go.
long time, and part of the reason has been, I'm Don Sherry, I'm the architect on the
Thank you.
project.
But
Welcome.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Before you start,
Sorry, Sherry.
Don, you submitted this copy of a Phase 1 ARC report in March, and it's a report that, and I think I spoke with you or I emailed you or something. It's a report that was prepared by Larry Carbone, but it was never reviewed or approved by the HLC. So I don't know why. I mean, it was prepared, but it was never submitted. So
Do you want me to comment on that?
Yes.
I've had extensive conversations with Michael Berman about the Phase 1 archaeological because our original design involved 2 small additions on the back, which is the south elevation. The street faces north, but there were 2 small additions, and Michael said that we would be required to do a shovel analysis if we were going to be still proposing those 2 small additions. So what we decided to do is bring the building back to within the existing footprint to keep it within the area that was previously disturbed, to avoid having to do the Phase 2 test, because he was going to require that before even I went to HLC, so which seemed a little contradictory to the direction we wanted to take. So it just worked out better to stay within the existing footprint anyway. And I told Dan Gullett that today, but that was submitted way back in March. I don't know who's supposed to review stuff. I just give it to the city, and they tell me what they need and what they don't. And in this case, they said Phase 2. We said no. They said, okay, we're fine. Continue on with HLC. With the Phase 1, Larry Carbone's not doing business anymore. A couple other people were too busy to do it. That was the point at which we decided to bring the building back.
Okay.
So that's where that is.
Okay, so if you are revising the project so that it will not be touching undisturbed soils, if you're going to revise it so that we don't need the Phase 1, then the project description needs to be amended to reflect that, because I don't think it was.
I think the Phase 1, I don't know if it would, I got the impression it was required anyway, and I just gave you a copy of the one that was done before, so I don't.
But okay, so if you do want to use this Phase 1, then the project description in this archaeological resources report needs to match the project
Right, and
description.
nobody will do that for me.
Ms.
Well,
Gantz, since we're not reviewing the ARC report, it can
No, you're not. I just want her to have the
okay.
heads up early that if she needs to have one prepared, they take a while to get done, and I don't want her coming or trying to submit for staff hearing officer approval and have this not even in the works, and then it'll put the project behind.
Well,
So-
nobody told me it had to be redone now that we brought the project back into it. If it does still, then I need to know that, because then I'll have to start from scratch.
Perhaps this could be worked out outside of this meeting.
Okay.
Thank
Talk
you.
to Dan. That'd be great.
Thank you. With all due respect. Would you like to go on with your presentation, please,
Yes.
Ms. Sherry?
So I apologize, I wasn't here when the report was approved, but I did go through the entire audio, and I tried to get a clarification. I did get a clarification through staff, through Bill Lavoie, on what was meant by, somebody said the south elevation issue, but it really, what I think was meant was the street elevation issue. But there was no comment about what that concern might be. But I later found out, and I'm only bringing this everybody up to speed so they would know what conversations went on via email. Mr. Lavoie mentioned a couple of concerns, just in an effort to keep me moving along. The project's been so long that we were delayed about 3 months just to get the historical structures report read by Jake Jacobus because of his scheduling. I'm just trying to move things along, so I'm not trying to put anybody out or go out of line. I'm just trying to move forward. So, so what I think I have clarified now are some concerns that I'd like to try to resolve. These plans are the same plans that you saw in the revised historic report that was approved last week. The reason I didn't make any changes is because I wanted to find out exactly what the concerns were from your standpoint. But I did get as far as I could with Mr. Lavoie stating that he felt that the project, and this is his own opinion, not everybody's opinion, but it happens to be my first preference, was to have gable roofs on this project. So what's interesting is that I was requested to remove the gable roofs and put in hip roofs. And so I did that, but in actuality I'm sorry? By post-Hazeltine. They told me to take the gable roofs off and replace them with hips. But my original design did have gables, and not that it matters what I want, I'm just the architect, nor what the property owner want, but what I would like is to go back to my original design of gable roofs, and I did sketch really quickly what that original design kind of looked like for everybody to see and get an opinion on my proposal for that, and a couple other things that were that came up with possibly being able to revisit the gable roof idea was on the front elevation. I originally did not have a gable roof over this little closet element. It was supposed to be a diminutive, small little piece with a drop plate and the roof kind of coming down lower. I still prefer that design, but this does show you what the gable roofs, in my opinion, look better than the hip roofs on this project, because the house is so small and the hip roofs with the tile is to me just not as clean. What I did do, though, since you last saw the project with regards to the setback, is I brought the addition, the second-story addition, back to the existing ridge line. Here's the existing ridge line. It's halfway between the existing lower level from here to here. So I brought that back all the way, and it used to be, if you see line C was the old line. So significantly, looking at the Mary Craig house that was remodeled, even though there are some places in that house that they don't bring the second story back, the ridge is actually, the existing lower level ridge is actually back farther, and the addition's pushed forward. But the owners did feel that this made the project better by bringing it back. What I have to watch is the only place I can put a staircase and having to have headroom clearance. So I had to keep headroom clearance for my stairwell, and I also liked the little piece that comes forward and for just breaking up the front elevation and adding a little element to that. So that was the significant change that I made to the design since you last saw the concept review. So the roof coming back. There was an issue that I think Fermina brought up about the chimney, and everybody agreed. So it was written or somebody mentioned it. I've shown an exposed chimney, although I I think it's, and again, this is just the architect's opinion, I think it's too, I think it doesn't go well with it. I've seen as many examples of integrated chimneys in the exterior walls as I have seen exposed chimneys, so I'd like to go back to my original design of the chimney just coming out over the ridge and having the tile come around it and having it integrated into the wall. Just after you see this, you may or may not agree with me, but that's what I would prefer to do. I'd prefer gable roofs. I'd prefer this little piece on the front, the way I originally designed it, the reduced or the increased front yard setback, and the integrated chimney. And there was one more thing. Oh, and Mr. Lavoie mentioned that he thought the addition needed to be lower. I was already down to 7 feet 6 inches, and I can only go down to 7'3" and still get a header over my doors. So I would be willing to do that. I just did that on a project, and it makes the room actually really nice. It's quaint, and it's about as low as you can go. I'm going to have to vault my ceilings, but I think the owners wanted to do that anyway on the upper level, and the vaulted ceilings would work better with the gable roofs. So,
real quickly, do you have the sketch of this being integrated? 'Cause I can't.
I think the original drawing
I
showed
know I
it
can't
being.
recall. You don't happen to have that with you?
No, I
Okay.
don't. I don't.
Gustav?
And,
Do you have the original submittal that shows the chimney integrated in?
So, so in summary, I just would like to get some direction so I can move on.
Okay. If everybody could keep quiet for a minute while I unfold these plans. This is what you
Yeah, and I would
prefer.
eliminate this as well. Just have the whole chimney integrated
Okay.
and then having it stick out.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Can you see that? Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you, Ms. Sherry. I will open public comment, having one speaker slip. Mr. DeForest, your comments, please.
So on DeForest, my comment is back when this was presented, it was the street presence that was the question. This is a...
Can you press the button?
Excuse me.
That's right, thanks.
It's the street presence that's important. Is like the house on Laguna Street, it's what it looks like from the street. And the house in Laguna Street, the remodel, adding a second story to that Mary Craig house, it doesn't come up and hit you in the face. You hardly know it's there, and I think this is what is needed for this structure. And I don't know on these drawings, where is the street facade?
If you could put that on the camera, please.
That's right here.
This is the street facade, Mr. DeForest.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the question is, how much is this?
It's not a question, this is comments.
The comment is, I'm sorry, the comment is that right now looks like it's going to overwhelm the rest of the house and the street facade.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. DeForest. Okay, questions from the commission. Mr. Schallenberger, any questions?
How come what's the purpose of including the existing duplex?
I was asked to include those drawings in my submittal.
Okay.
Even
and
though
then-
there's no alterations proposed.
Okay, and then the next and subsequent submittals, will you put existing and proposed on the same sheet, like south elevation, existing, south
Sure.
elevation, proposed? Thank you.
That's it? Okay, questions, Mr. Drury?
No.
Mr. Lavoie?
Just a point of clarification. Ms. Sherry called me. I did not respond with a call. I emailed Susan Gantz and passed my comments to Susan Gantz.
Thank you, Mr. Lavoie. Commissioner Murray, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner No Boucher, no Rios. I have a question. Did you draw any sections through existing conditions, the neighboring properties? Didn't we ask for that?
Yeah, you did, and I apologize, I did not.
Okay.
I forgot about that comment completely. I was so overwhelmed with making sure I took care of everything else. But there are two...
I do feel that would be helpful, particularly with these two in
Yeah, and
relationship
there are
to the...
photos, though, that show they're significant two-story structures on either side.
All right, comments, Commissioner Schallenberger. If you could specifically, I guess, address the hip versus gable, mostly. Gable. Anything else?
Well, just that proportionally, I think the sketch
Provided that showing the gables, I think, massing-wise, generally speaking, I prefer your original concept, or your preferred concept, I should say. It looks like some of the massing is a little bit different in the CAD drawings. So, if you can, I don't know, incorporate sort of the way proportionally the massing is working in the sketches.
And I know you guys are in the middle of comments, but I forgot to say two small little things about that one particular issue. And one is that
10
I
seconds.
still have a hip shown on the east, but since I've lowered the plate, I have enough room to do the gable on both ends.
Where is that, Ms. Sherry?
That's, you can see on this elevation that I still show the hip, but I think that by lowering the plate...
Right, so
I
it
could-
actually comes out like that, right?
No, this would be a gable on this end right here.
Oh,
that would
beg
be a
your
gable,
pardon.
which is back to my original design. So sorry
Okay.
about that.
All right.
And then I also prefer. I kind of like that inset instead of having all this.
Okay, that's
be-
it.
Anyway,
That's it. Commissioner Drury.
I would agree with Commissioner Sheldon.
Commissioner Lavoie.
I would agree.
Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Boucher. Commissioner Arias. Commissioner Suding. Yes.
It can be engaged or unengaged.
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to, I think for the most part it looks better in unengaged, but if the applicant wants to do it engaged, I don't have any problem with that. And everybody feel the same way? Okay. However, on the north elevation, I'm wondering if it wouldn't look better to have a hipped roof on that portion only. Just to diminish the size, bulk and scale? Okay. Then you got it. Well, I'm looking at this, and I think that that's a lot more diminutive than this is.
But a hip roof is so unlike.
Okay, perfect. No problem. I have no problem with that.
It's the pitch of the
Okay.
single story that
Okay.
makes it hard.
You don't have to convince me anymore.
Okay.
Okay.
and I hate to interrupt you one more time, but before you make a motion, if you are going to, if you were, or you, it was going to be a continuance anyway. But I just had one more point of clarification that the original design had a little cut, a little inset for the rear elevations, and then the subsequent submittal did not. That was approved with the historical report. Does the board have a preference on the full two-story wall going all the way back, or the inset?
Show us the plan.
You like the inset the way I liked
prefer
it.
the inset
So do I.
Because you're supposed to leave some room to show us the old and the new,
So,
even though we
That's what
don't
I
see
thought.
it.
I liked it too.
You know.
are you talking about right here?
Yeah, I'm talking about the rear, the back, where I had pushed in the. Where's that? This design pushed it back out, but my original design had it inset a little bit, just a little bit on the ends, which I like because it gave a nice line to the rear of the house. That was, again, one of my original designs.
All right. Anybody want to comment on that? You heard a comment from Ms. Murray?
Yeah, I think that should be there because that way, even though we don't see it from the road, it's showing the old and the new, and that's important for historic buildings.
Okay. Would someone like to craft a motion?
Can we make a motion that this would go to the consent calendar?
Uh-huh.
I would make such a motion with the comments as printed.
Okay. Do we have the comments, or do you need those summarized? The comment is that the commission prefers the gabled roof. The applicant may engage the fireplace with the wall or have it unengaged. It doesn't make a lot of difference at this juncture. And the commission prefers the inset on the two side elevations, second floor, as depicted in with the dashed line on sheet A 1.2, proposed upper level floor plan.
Mr. Chair, can we include the exhibit of the sketch?
Yes,
The person reviewing the consent isn't here?
The sketches will be included, and if we could actually label these preferred option and the correct. So you don't need to. I've ended my comments. So this is north elevation, south, west, and east.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Ms.
HLC
Gantz.
prefers the inset on the two side elevations, second floor, as depicted with the gash line on sheet what?
A 1.2.
And there was something else you said after that, no?
Proposed A 1.2 for proposed upper floor level plan.
Thank you.
That's the caption underneath that drawing. Just a second. Commissioner Bias.
Your comments also include her suggestion to point that roof down like that.
No, the drawing depicts the offset of the upper level already.
Okay.
It was the offset on the...
I just do want to make it clear that the consent calendar reviewer shall refer to the 11 by 17 preferred elevations dated 8/17/11. Got that? Okay. So we
this is
had a
gonna
motion
be-
by.
It's actually going to be an indefinite continuance to the staff hearing officer, and then to come back to HLC.
Sounds good.
consent.
Is that okay with the maker of the motion? Okay. And do we have a second?
No, second.
Second by Murray.
I think we also need to include support for modifications.
I think you did that on the
I think we
first.
did. Yeah, we did. We did.
So it's part of the record.
Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I have to abstain.
Okay. Thank you for being as patient as you have been.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll talk to Michael about that. I'll call you about the archaeological. I need to talk to you.
That was Murray that seconded it. Okay, I am going to take a minute here. We're going to move on to item 7, which is 1700 Cabrillo Boulevard. I have an answer to the site visit of the police station if anybody wants to read that. Okay, so we are going on to item number 7, 1700 East Cabrillo Boulevard. This parcel is on the city's list of potential historic resources, the Andre Clark Bird Refuge. It's the site of Chumash Village and Salt Pond, 42 acres. It is included on the State Historic Resource Inventory. This project is comments only. It requires environmental assessment and Planning Commission review.
Excuse me, Kathy, is this what you submitted? Yes. Same thing?
Yes.
Pass it down when you're done, please.
We'll take one. One for each end.
At the table. If you could put one over there.
This is another view.
Oh, do you have 3 copies of your plan?
I submitted it.
Okay. She's just in the process of passing that out then. The 3 copies of the plan. Which one are you going to speak to first?
This one.
Okay.
The one on the
If
bottom.
you could lift that one up, please. Thank you.
Kathy, did you want these handed out too? Right now.
That's the other attachments. I don't think we need
don't
them.
need 'em?
No,
Okay,
I don't think so. I have a few other views, and I can pull those up. In fact, I'll print those out.
Okay. Introduce yourself, please, for the record, and
Yes.
give us a brief presentation, please.
Yes. Good afternoon. I am Kathy Fry, Natural Areas Planner for Parks Division. And I am presenting the vegetation maintenance and habitat restoration for the Andrea Clark Bird Refuge. And as you said, it's 42 acres and includes approximately a 29-acre lake with 3 islands in the center. There are no habitable structures on the property and no maintenance buildings. This is an open space park, and it provides passive recreation in the city, in the eastern portion of the city, southeastern. Just for orientation, East Beach is in that corner right there.
I mean, it must not be. Did they switch to Parks and Rec Commission or something? Did they switch to Parks and Rec Commission today?
The broadcast?
No? Oh, you would be there, though. Yeah, because our camera operator's not cooperating. Well,
Is it going?
no. Okay, there we go.
There we
Thank
go.
you. Okay, East Beach here.
This map is also a vegetation map, and the vegetation, the habitat types are down here. They're color-coded. The non-native vegetation is faded out. The reason that was done is because the majority of the impacts for this project, in fact, all of the impacts occur to the emergent vegetation, and those impacts are outlined in red. The project will remove 0.86 acres of marsh vegetation out of the submerged area of the lake. It also includes less than 0.1 acres out of a channel at the north of the property, and that's also on the, we don't have to look at it this moment, but there's also another drainage along Old Coast Highway.
Okay, just for orientation's sake, this is Andre Clark Bird Refuge over here, everyone.
Over here.
I'm sorry, over
Over here, yes.
Beg your pardon. Thank you.
There's a hydraulic connection
Uh-huh.
to the bird refuge. That's why we've included it with this project. This is the culvert, and these are both man-made culverts. They're hardscaped. That's this culvert right here. We would be removing sediment, and in that sediment, some vegetation that's similar. You can see the colors are similar. That's marsh vegetation, has grown in there, but it was never intended to be habitat. We don't consider it habitat. It's a culvert. It's a cement, concrete bottom culvert. And it's filled with sediment, which leads me to the purpose of the project, which is to restore conveyance within the culverts and within the bird refuge, and to provide an area where vector control can get in for mosquito abatement.
Staff, I beg your pardon. Staff
Sure.
handed out some photos, and they disappeared on me. Okay. Go ahead. Continue. I'm sorry.
So I was stating the purpose for the project was for storm flow conveyance, to open up this culvert back up, and this whole project area in here is now tules and cattails that have filled in. It's actually created a marshy, boggy bridge to this western island. Yes. During higher periods of water level, there is not a connection. During very dry periods, the water level goes down, and it is boggy and marshy, but because of the sediment flow coming in. And that's one of the reasons that the tules and the cattails are in there, is that they prefer, which you can see around the very edge perimeter, that's where they grow, in that shallower area. We're trying to go in, we're trying to open this up so that there's more flow into the lake. It uses aquatic equipment that would come in through the parking lot, which is on Los Patos Way. That aquatic equipment would come in, would clear areas at 3 platforms. And this platform is totally blocked right now. There is no view from here anymore. These are viewing platforms for wildlife. We'd also go into this area. There is a drain that comes in here. The same thing that occurred here occurred in this position. And we'd go in and put in 2 or 3 channels for vector control to get in.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Schellenberger? Drury?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to do anything about the, or is there
The problem with the outfall going across to East Beach underneath Cabrillo Boulevard, that's working properly as far as we know? Huh?
That weir is closed at the moment.
Right.
It has been closed for quite some time. We have no plans to do anything with that, with this project.
But okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lavoie.
Just point of clarification, you said no habitation in this area. There's no human habitation in this area. Am I correct?
No habitable structures.
That's what she said. You were Commissioner Murray. Any questions?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Boucher?
No. Why can't you
I don't know.
remind
Commissioner
me?
Arias, no questions? I have a question, I guess, and maybe I missed the answer. Why are you doing this?
We are doing this to open up the culvert here and to also open up the bird refuge flow through here so that vector control can get in and also so that the water flow can go through here.
Okay.
There is another portion of the project, and I'm sorry I missed that in the beginning, and that is we are going to be restoring 0.86 acres of marsh habitat, native habitat within the bird refuge. And that actually is in the submerged area. There is a small portion along the edge of the zoo that we'll be doing.
I guess the reason I was asking it is because it's sort of, it's almost a natural process that has happened, and you're reversing that process for intended reasons. I understand the reasons, and I'm just, I guess, questioning is that the appropriate thing to do?
We are working with jurisdictional agencies. We actually had a meeting in the end of January, beginning of February with the agencies. There's quite a bit of jurisdiction, Army Corps, Regional Board.
I can imagine.
Yes.
Okay.
Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, and they're all weighing in on it, and we will be going through the permit process with them in addition to the
This
city.
will have to be done in another 25 years or whatever. Again.
Why fight nature?
Well, it seems like it's a natural process, and we certainly all value the bird refuge, and we want to maintain the health of it and all of that. And I see natural systems happening as they want to incur a stasis or a balance. And it seems like taking away the marshland that has wanted to naturally develop there is going against that sort of process.
But my understanding was the silt have gathered there, and because of the culverts that is not.
Right.
So isn't the silt a problem? I mean, that's why you are removing it, or is that because of fixing the culvert? I mean,
the silt's coming in, and because it's becoming more shallow, at one time the bird refuge was connected to Sycamore Creek, and when the railroad was built, that was rerouted. So we have a system in here. And in fact, this was an estuary at one time, and now we all know that. And now it is a lake with a marine influence. And there is a lot of recruitment. If you look back in aerial photography back over the years, you'll notice that this area, the beach, is open. That's what we refer to as the beach here. There were other areas along the shoreline that were totally open, and from recruitment, what happens during the winter, and it happened especially this winter, is we have the water level rise. It raises the tules in clumps, and they actually move through the bird refuge. When I was out there with the regional board, we actually watched three
floating tules.
Three floating tules, maybe 5 feet across or in diameter, move across the bird refuge, and wherever they bump into something, whatever mass is alive in there reroutes. And so it actually has gone through a period where there's been recruitment along the shoreline, and our total shoreline is now just about our total shoreline includes vegetation with tules or cattails.
Ms. Zachary, did you have anything you needed to add?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Jill Zachary, I'm the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. And I would just add, it is natural, but it is highly constructed. And the bird refuge itself takes all of the drainage from about a 700-acre watershed. It's mostly large lot residential, but there are roadways like Highway 101, Old Coast Highway, there's a golf course, which is what drops the sediment into the bird refuge. In recent times, many years ago, the department managed it differently. Because of the regulations for wetlands, management is really challenging. And one of the challenges we have is how do we manage this natural system, yet also recognize it's in an urban setting. And that's also the issue with the mosquitoes. And that's really what is driving a portion of this project is we do need to engage in a mosquito abatement, and then we also have flooding issues. So it's how do we balance all these competing interests in this location.
So it's that's proper management. Okay, and you're finished with your presentation, I'm assuming. Okay, we finished with questions. I forgot to open public comment. One individual, Christopher Price from Price Postal and Parma LLP, needed to leave. He wanted me to read his comments with respect to the Clark Estate. He is an organization representing the Clark Estate. We support the project and look forward to working with the city on future public improvements with both the bird refuge and the estate itself. I have one more public comment, Mr. DeForest.
This is on. I just want to know who's paying for this.
That's a question you don't need to answer. Thank you, Mr. DeForest. One question I do have, how does this interface with the vegetation removal that the zoo is doing on the perimeter of their property, which was reviewed maybe a year ago? So you're coordinating with them and working closely with the zoo?
Yes,
on
I'm working with Channel Islands Restoration. I've
Right.
contacted
Okay.
Darlene
Very well.
Sherman.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, any comments? Mr. Schallenberger?
I don't see any adverse impacts to the historical resources.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Murray, Commissioner Drury, Commissioner Lavoie, Commissioner Boucher, Commissioner Arias. We are then looking for just comments. You have your comments? Very well. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on now to item 8, 12 East Montecito Street. This is a review after final, and suiting is stepping down. Mr. Lavoie, will you take over, please?
Do we have the applicant?
They probably are on patio. I'll try and go get them. Sorry. We're ready for you.
Hey.
So here's the new.
That's the new plan?
It's in the hallway.
Plans?
Let's go.
Oh.
They're in the hallway. I just walked in.
They're where?
They're in the hall. We've been sitting outside chatting. Thank you.
Take these two out of the way. Drop them on either side.
Is this the
Close.
Clodora?
Yeah. Gentlemen, welcome. This is the review for 12 East Montecito Street. This was previously heard on August 3rd, for review after final, with the following motion and comments. The Commission appreciates the proposed landscape improvements. The columns on the added trellis facing State Street on the west elevation should be the same dimensions as the existing columns. Provide a mechanical solution for the 3 windows facing Montecito Street to not allow people to climb up on the roof. I think that was access across the roof. Proposed canopy for the east elevation entry is of concern. It is inappropriate for this building style. Consider that the east elevation does not necessarily need awnings to mitigate sun angle intrusion, although the solution for the west elevation is appropriate. The bike enclosure conversion to a mechanical equipment room is appropriate. At least 3 commissioners felt that the State Street Plaza should be designed to be perceived as a public space as discussed in the past, even if it is fenced. The motion passed unanimously. Would you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Sure. Clay O'Rell from AB Design Studio, architect for the project. To my right, your left, is Ken Allison from AB Design Studios. And our landscape architect, whom you know, Phil Suding, is here as well. Shall we begin?
Begin.
I'm just going to kind of go one by one here. The first item in the motion was an acknowledgement, so there's not much to talk about. The second item is the columns on the added pergola. Let me go to sheet here. Sorry. 401. Thank you.
That shows an elevation.
Actually, that's the portale on the
Okay.
facing south. And we've revised the pergola to replicate the columns per suggestion and created a rhythm that has us spaced outside of the doors. The building is a little asymmetrical in a few different ways, so this seemed to be the best solution that got us the shade we desperately need along this part of the building.
Okay.
The next item was provide a mechanical solution for the 3 windows. That's these 3 windows. These are for egress, and per building code, they need to be openable in case of an emergency. They're not intended to be operable from the standpoint of anybody coming out on the roof, but they are egress windows, meaning that if there was an emergency, they would be able to come out there, and the sill of such window needs to be minimum 3'6" above. Yeah.
Do you have a section through that?
I don't know if we did a section 2901. I think that's a similar detail. That's
Yes.
just a standard.
Just
But that doesn't have the roof coming into it. Number 4, the proposed canopy on the east elevation is of concern. We've essentially gone back to what was previously approved and looked at before. We've enlarged it slightly so that we could get a double door situation.
Okay.
But it's basically the same detail. Number 5, consider that the east elevation doesn't need awnings. That's the same elevation. We've pulled all the awnings off of this elevation for your comment. The bike enclosure conversion to mechanical equipment is appropriate. It didn't get in the minutes, but I know there's some discussion about the design of it. I think probably from you, Commissioner LaVoy. We've since just really simplified it. This was what was previously approved here, and what we're essentially doing is we're making this a little bit taller and a little bit wider in this direction and that direction, so that we can put basically a floor ceiling in and put our mechanical units, not the utes, the units in that location, so that they're screened visually and they get the air. And this is sort of a roof plan of it. We need to have it fully open to the sky.
Okay.
So that's why we're doing that. Number 7, at least 3 commissioners felt the State Street Plaza should be designed and perceived as a public square. There was a lot of discussion about that last time, so I'll let Phil really dive into that. We've done a lot of maneuvering on that design, so I'll let him jump in for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
want to turn to the last two sheets, the last three sheets, we can look at that. But I did want to show you some photos of what the inspiration was for the plaza and how do we make that be perceived as a public area. What my sensibilities told me in the many nightmares I've had was to bring some architecture out to the street, and I think that's what makes a successful plaza appearance. We have one that is down the street from the hostel in Madrid, Spain. I was fortunate enough to be able to walk up and down that street last week via Google Street View. Another plaza.
Say you were here.
Well, it's funny because the name happened to be Via Felipe, which, you know, my translation of my name is Felipe. Anyways, that was fun. There's another, you know, much more elaborate sort of solution. And then here in Santa Barbara, we have Stork Placita with the columns and that architecture brought out to the street. So I think that sort of works as the, you know, solution to making this a perceived as public. And then I wanted to bring some examples of fountains that could be used as pools. This is a European fountain, could very well be a pool. It's you know, very serene when it's not being used, and it could also be very active. Here's another photograph of a pool that reads as a reflecting pond when it is not in use. And then, of course, we have a local example, Valverde in Montecito, designed by Lockwood DeForest mostly, where I am showing the column examples as well as the pool as a fountain example. So, all that being said, we will start here on State Street. State Street drops down and goes under the freeway at this point. There's photos if you want to see those. So this sidewalk is dropping down considerably. There is a, this sidewalk here, there's a wall that ranges from about 3 feet on up to about 12 feet there. Then, of course, there's the sidewalk that is at this level here. So that's the sidewalk, essentially, that pedestrians would perceive this entry here, this gate here. Our fence goes around the property, hits the bike enclosure, mechanical enclosure, then hits the building and is finished. Along here, same thing, hits the building and then is finished. As Clay is bringing out, this is a view of the hostel building from across the street, pretty much at the Enterprise Fish Company. So you can see how its relationship to the actual vehicular traffic versus the pedestrian traffic versus the at-grade pedestrian traffic is completely different in so many ways. So what we did is we designed some columns here at the back of the sidewalk, and I'll show you a quick little detail of those columns. These columns emulate the columns that are on the portale and the arbor, the proposed arbor. However, they are shorter. The ones on the portale are 10 feet. We reduced this one to 9 feet, this one to 8 feet. And that goes back to this inspiration of these columns that are at Valverde. Just very simple, stately, not over ornamented, or don't necessarily have a member across the top of them that tie it together. It's just very simple, very elegant, I think. So that is what we are proposing. Excuse me, you're not finished with that? Yeah. Along the sidewalk. We enter the plaza, and we have some benches here. This is a mortared flagstone surface that comes around, and then voila, you see the fountain in the pool. It is surrounded by a hedge, very much like the hedge that you see at Valverde and so many of the other Spanish villas. And it's not meant necessarily to be a tall hedge that is 8 feet tall. It's meant to just sort of encompass this area so that it's a surprise kind of thing. We are proposing water jets, very similar to that sort of thing, where when the pool's not in use, it's just a very nice feature to have. Then surrounding the interior of the courtyard, the outside perimeter, we have, of course, the patios with the flagstone mortared. And then we have loose flagstone leading up to each one of those patios with planting areas threaded throughout the whole project. So in essence, we're getting more landscape area than we did when we had the 5 olive theme that's going on. There's a lot more vegetation happening. Proposing to do 2 olives as trees right here at the entry, then wrapping around doing some magnolias, jacarandas, melaleucas. None of this has changed from when you last saw it. Pretty much straightforward. I think our focus was mainly on the entry plaza, or the entry area. And we did retain the cedar. The one we're proposing, the Cedrus deodara, which is a really nice big tree. I think it'll serve as a nice sort of anchor, as a place filler, a biomass filler between these 2 buildings here. That.
Vines on this building too.
Yeah, the vines on the trash enclosure would be clinging vines like ficus. Minimum. Yes.
What are you talking about? What is the plant material under the cedar?
Plant material is the Muhlenbergia rigens. It's a deer grass. The plant palette is flax, deer grass, some aloes, kangaroo paws, and ground cover in here of Fragaria, which is the beach strawberry. And then between the stepping stones, we're going to do planted joints, and that would most likely be Diamondia in there. And then just a real quick irrigation plan. The backflow preventer is located down here, and it's going to be shielded by the dendromecon, which is island bush poppy, and it's about 4 to 6 feet tall, so it's going to go away. So we'll talk about a little bit more about this detail and the gate. This is a suggestion on the gate. I happened to have this in our library, and I thought it was somewhat attractive with the knuckles. It's not necessarily set in stone, but it highlights the gate different than the fence, and I think that that's appropriate because that is where you enter. That's hey, this gate is special, or this gate is a little bit different, but it's referential to the fence.
Thou shalt not try to climb over that.
That would be difficult. It's got spears, and it is a 5 foot tall, and then the column is 8'6" and 9 foot, and I think it works out nicely proportionally. The fence here would be solid top and bottom rail, and round tubular steel in between, 4 inches apart. And then the posts, the intermediate posts that have to occur about every 8 feet, would be square steel stock, and all of it would be painted with Malaga green, most likely, or Malaga green, however Mr. House would say it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Being none, I'll close public comment. Any questions from the commission? Mr. Schallenberger?
No.
Jury?
So is that spaces on the fence and the gate are the same, I'm assuming, between the uprights?
The space between the 2 inner posts is 6 feet.
No, I'm talking about the space between the
Between pickets?
Yeah.
Between the pickets.
They're supposed to be the same, yes.
Okay, thank you.
They may not look it, but they're supposed to be. That would be 4
Any
inches on
questions?
center.
Ms. Reyes, any questions? Please.
I may have missed it. Where's the pool motor and everything?
The pool equipment would be located in that mechanical shed near
Mechanical
the,
bike enclosure?
near the big cedar.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. And you will have lights out here?
Yes.
I believe you showed him a cut sheet last time, didn't you? On the handle picture?
We have lights planned on the building. There's some in the portale here in each one of these bays, and there's some along the building as well. And in terms of landscape, the pool itself, yes. That's yes.
That's it? Mr. Reese, is that all? Thank you. Any comments? None?
Comments. I think they've met all the things we asked them, and especially the landscape. I think they really went beyond what we asked them. So I'm.
Oh, you mean we should back off?
No, I think it's just really they took all our comments well, and I'm ready to approve this or whatever we need to do.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes?
Sure. I think it's a lovely project.
Okay.
Were you making a motion?
I'm making a motion. What are we doing? Comments only, or no? I'm making a motion to.
This is review after final. We can give it final approval, but there's more drawing that needs to be done to come back to consent, probably, your final working drawings. I don't see an electrical
Then
plan.
you can't give it final then, if it has to come back to consent.
What needs to come back?
Can't we give it final to get into the building department, and then with the final details to come back to consent? That we've done that before,
Yeah,
unless
I don't
things
know
have
how,
changed.
with a review after final, I don't know how it will be done in the system, but I'll leave that up to Gabriella and
Okay.
Jaime Limon.
Exactly. Thank you.
She's not here, so give her all the
And he's gone for the night, so we can talk about him. So there's a motion for final, for revised final approval.
For a revised second. For after final.
With details to consent when?
With details to consent,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. The only comment I have is that the wrought iron detailing needs some refinement.
The wrought iron of the fence, the ornamental iron fence.
The fence and the gate.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm concerned about the use of the word tubular steel, whether the applicant means round stock, round solid
Well,
stock.
round, hollow.
Not hollow.
Can't
Not
do
hollow. No.
It would save a bunch of money.
You cannot do. Don't tell us that. You're not supposed to do hollow steel.
I know that.
On the district. You know that, sir. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hold down the fort for a little while?
Sure. That wasn't that bad a review.
No, I'm just going to go get drunk.
Can take the color set?
Pardon me?
Just to take the color set?
One that they reviewed, yeah.
This is complete right here.
Thank you.
Got it?
Okay, 210 West Korea Street, same applicant?
Same applicant. Same badge hand.
Same architect.
Okay. That color on top? Which one's colored? This is the one you had. So this? Perfect.
This was last reviewed on August 3rd with the following motion.
Do you have the comments list?
The trash enclosure as proposed is supportable. The south elevation is an important elevation because it's a heavily traveled street that is an entrance to the city. The south elevation needs more work. Perhaps deeper windows would help. Perhaps reworking the rhythm of the windows along the south elevation to be more traditional in placement. The door to the left of the south elevation needs to be treated more traditionally and without a supported overhang. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves for the record again.
Absolutely. Clay Arell with AB Design Studio. To my right, your left is Eric Bear from AB Design Studio.
Thank you.
We lost some of our esteemed panel, but we'll jump in anyway. I'll just go down the list like we did last time. The trash enclosure No comment. The south, pretty much we're just looking at the south elevation today. So let's just go right to that. One of the things we did, and we don't actually have what we saw last time. We could pull it up in the file. We have done several things here. Number one, we used to have 6 windows. We've reduced it to 5 so that we could get more wall space in between each individual. And we've also pushed them back from the face about 14 inches, was it? That shows up actually in the plan, sorry. And we have a detail of it as well. This was previously approved, so we're really not talking much about that, although we're using that as reference or influence to do this and continue around the building. On this end, we've framed out this wall so that we don't have that odd cantilever that was there originally, and we've new metal door system that we have around the project, around this building already, and then we've put a little beam header in over the front just to kind of give it a little bit of, just a little detail, a little charm element, but keeping it simple. On the plan, I'll show you. Here's where we've boxed that out and pulled that window back. And again, we've reduced. We're bumping these back because we need this for structural reason. But we have the window line is back about 14 inches from there, and we actually have a detail that shows that. On the other side of the building, which is more the interior side of the building, this is facing parking lot and what is Spud Nuts directly across from it. And on this side, we're repeating that same rhythm on the parking lot side and the same spacing and window size and taking out these sort of odd aluminum windows that were put in at some point in time. And on this elevation, which is facing the back of the parking lot, which you really don't see from the street, we have this current opening here, which we're putting a door and side light system in. And this was previously approved as a door and side light. We're changing that to double doors. The rest of this is going to be cleaned up, but it's staying as it is. These are all utility areas. And on the... That's on the parking lot side, yeah. In fact, it's not shown... I'm sorry, can I go back? Here, this is where that trash enclosure is on the parking lot side.
So those meters are set now?
This is all, yeah, meters and switchgear is all in here. So the transformer's sitting here, and then this is all of our switchgear in this existing utility closet.
So these are doors?
Those are doors.
These are doors.
Yeah, that's what's there today.
There isn't a landscape. The landscape is more or less done, right?
Yeah, the landscape was previously approved, and with this application, we're actually, if you'll remember, we're adding, with this new design of the trash enclosure, we've actually increased the landscaping. So what's now is just striped with a little box and a tree, which I don't remember the name. Thank you. I'm not going to try to say that. We're adding more landscape underneath that. Thank you. And putting a new one back because the other one can't really be transplanted. So
Okay. Any
the
questions?
rest of this hasn't changed. Oh, one other item that came up.
Oh, wait.
It was a question from staff recently about one of the things that we're going to be doing is at some point in the game we're going to be adding fire sprinklers to this center. So we're proposing a sprinkler backflow device right here behind that wall.
Okay.
So there's a site wall here, and then we'll put the device behind that wall, and it'll be landscaped and screened.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that was in there.
That's very good. That's one of my big things.
I know. It's one of mine too. So we're trying to make sure we cover that.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Questions from the commission? Mr. Schellenberger?
Did you study at all breaking up the windows in any other way? I'm just thinking about how the single light large plate windows relate to the broken up French doors.
On which?
It would be A401.
How they relate to this door? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure I got it.
It's on the east elevation the same way. But yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're talking about those doors and these doors. Here's the direction I'm getting from the client. As it's been stated, Carrillo's kind of a thoroughfare, and we're assuming some retail tenant's going to go in here, so we're trying to provide as much visibility as we can. So we've looked at other options, but it's been an issue for trying to provide enough visibility from people walking by and such. So we want to keep them open as much as possible.
Questions from you? Luis?
I was going to make a comment.
Questions, Mr. Reyes? Comments? That follows with comment.
No, it's I think an improvement for sure. I like the transoms above both the doors and the windows. I think that works well. I'll just defer to the architect on his choice for window breakups. It's fine, I think, one way or the other. Maybe the French doors being single light would work better in that same interplay, but it's fine. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, really. But just generally positive comments.
Ms. Bichette?
I would like to see breakups in those windows. They don't have to be all over.
In these windows?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Reyes?
They could just be in the upper portion of the window or something, but something instead of
Well,
big sheets of glass.
they are in the transom,
They are in the transom.
which is a pattern we see a lot of.
Okay, that's all right.
So you're fine with that?
And then they're recessed in.
Okay.
Working into, so that's really helpful.
I've only heard positive comments. We could, now that we don't have staff in the room.
We do too.
Okay. Yeah, but Susan's not here. But Gabriella will take it. We are here for design approval, are we not?
Yes.
We do after
And if we could do final, that'd be great.
She's going to have a cow again. Because it's the same motion as the previous motion, as final design approval with complete details to come to the consent calendar. Can I have that motion, please?
Yes, I make that motion, please.
Consent calendar, when? Continued
2 weeks?
indefinitely?
You got a lot of work to do?
Can I ask,
Indefinitely?
No, actually, we've pretty much detailed it out. I think the only thing we might be missing is the electrical, like an electrical plan, but other than that.
We want to see that on the exterior.
Okay.
Final approval gets you into the building department.
Okay, great.
So you can,
Yep.
so 2 weeks?
Perfect.
2 weeks, please?
You never did go in the building department before with your final?
We did. We actually have a permit for the scope of work that we did here. This is a review after final. We're going back. We'll do an addendum to the permit we actually have. So
All
yes.
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I did.
Fermina? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later. See you at the next one.
Mr. Chair.
Yes? That's okay. The staff remaining in the room carried it for us. It was final, final with the electrical plan to come back to the consent calendar. That's okay. Are you back?
Thank you.
No.
Here, you can take that one. I mean, here's the.
And it didn't bounce back up? No, it didn't bounce. Okay, let's keep going. That's great. I love that old fire station.
Staff has some comments on this.
Do I take Maybe. No, you lost yours.
Yeah, I did. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 10 for 925 Chapala Street. I apologize to the applicant that we are behind 15 minutes. This is a proposal to remodel a former auto muffler repair shop into office space for City Fire Station number 1. This is a review after final to consider previous HLC directive to retain poured-in-place concrete on the south elevation. Staff, I believe you have some comments.
Mr. Chair, it's Historic Landmarks Commission. This applicant came forward to staff requesting consideration of this issue, and I wanted to provide you some information if you don't recollect with the discussion. Back in 2010, when they proposed this renovation, there was a request by the architect to have some improvements made on this elevation of the building. And at the time, I did listen to the tape, and there was some discussion with our urban historian at the time as to whether this poured-in-place concrete wall was a character-defining element. It should be retained. And today you're going to hear some information that will add into that discussion and a request to reconsider that decision. And I believe there's some basis for it. So I'll turn that over to the applicant.
Okay, and then I will actually read the minutes from the last meeting. If I can find them, hold on, please. This was a concept review in June of 2010. Final approval with the following conditions. Minimum 5-gallon dense evergreen flowering vines shall be provided, and the parapet cap shall be simple sheet metal painted out to match the board form concrete of color without stucco. Okay, if you could introduce yourselves for the record and give us a presentation.
Richard Christian with KBZ Architects.
Welcome.
I'm Ron Lichty, Administrative Services Manager for the City of Santa Barbara Fire Department.
Welcome.
I'm Andy Demizio, Fire Chief for the City of Santa Barbara.
Welcome. Go ahead.
All right. We initially, our initial design we presented did include plastering the south and west walls of the building to match the front facade of the building, which has been plastered from the very beginning. We are doing substantial improvements to the south wall. We're adding a staff entrance with a canopy, some planters, stairs, railings, a small ramp, and we felt strongly that that improvement should, the plastering of that side of the building would enhance that improvement. As you can see from the photo, that wall is very visible driving on Chapala. Since our original presentation, we have discovered this original photograph. The building was constructed in 1928, and at the time it was constructed next to the existing fire station. And the reason that building was never plastered is because it was up against that existing fire station. And it would remain that way for the first 30-odd years until the new fire station was constructed and the old one was demolished. So we felt like, from a historical standpoint, that wall was never intended to be exposed. And now that it is, we'd like to bring it up to a good appearance, similar to the front facade, which has always been plastered.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
The parapet would remain the same?
Yes.
This parapet detail that we had here?
Yes.
Which is that detail there? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I also thought that given that new information and the need to waterproof that side of the building, that it seemed a logical thing to have that side improved. So,
Do you mean it's not waterproof now?
well, it's in deteriorated condition, so I think it opens up a question of whether it should be improved in that manner.
Okay. Questions from the Commission? Commissioner Arias? Commissioner Boucher? Commissioner Murray? Lavoie? And Schallenberger, any questions?
Why didn't you say so?
If we would have known that back then.
I wish we had done our homework a little better at that point, yes.
Question I have is, when was the fire station torn down? In other words, how long has this wall been exposed as board form concrete?
I believe it was in the 60s. That's when the new one was constructed.
Mr. Chair, that would have been right around 1959, 1960.
Okay, so we've exposed that wall for more than 50 years. Comments, Commissioner Orias.
No, I just think it's a good idea what you're proposing.
Okay.
I think it enhances the downtown and the streetscape.
Commissioner Boucher, any comments?
You have public hearing open.
Oh, God, I always forget
Can
that.
I see the picture
Sorry.
of the old?
Yeah, I'm going to actually open public comment, and I see one member of the public, Mr. DeForest.
What is the agenda number?
The item number?
Yeah.
You can fill that out later. It's item number 10. Go ahead with your comments, Mr. DeForest. Thank you.
What? Okay. It would be nice that, because this is Chapala Street is an important street. It was nice when the fire department was there. It was a solid buildings, and now we have that place where the fire station is just a vacant lot, or appears to be a vacant lot. I'm sure it's going to be used for parking. I think it would be nice if it was planted or something on Chapala Street that so the facade of the muffler shop, or now your private, isn't so blatant. It looks like a building should be put next. The fire station or some building should be next to it to cover that big white wall. So possibly it could be planted with planting along Chapala Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Seeing no other public, I will close public comment, bring it back to the commission, and
Mr. Chair?
yes, Commissioner
As I recall,
Shea.
as I recall, this is a way to bring the fire trucks out and in. Just wanted to check. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else? Comments? Commissioner LaVoy, comment?
I wasn't here for the previous review, so this is somewhat late. While I'd missed the Benton Brood, if you're going to plaster it, you need to have a better parapet detail.
Yes.
No exposed,
Well,
without exposed sheet metal. Okay, so your plaster's wrapping over the sheet metal.
No, the plaster will be
Will.
under the sheet metal.
Okay.
Okay, because this was
This
approved.
detail will be
okay.
modified to-
This is approved without plaster. Okay.